Chapter 3002. The Heavenly Cycle Star Formation was a famous top-notch formation among the countless formations that had appeared in the long history of the myriad heavens and realms. It was said that once it was set up, it could compete with an emperor. In the past, when the ancient heavenly court was besieged, it did not fall for many years because of the Heavenly Cycle Star Formation. Even the 5-yuan Punishing Sky Formation, relying on the combat power of 5 peak quasi-emperors, could not stop the NID, who was considered to be at the bottom of the emperor rank. It was conceivable how big the gap between the combat power of a quasi-emperor and an emperor rank was. Using the Heavenly Cycle Star Formation could make up for this flaw. However, it was not easy to form the Heavenly Cycle Star Formation because it required 900 and 810 quasi-emperors to guard a region. Such a terrifying number of quasi-emperors could only be taken out when the ancient heavenly court was at its peak. In addition, there were 10 incomparably powerful peak quasi-emperor demon kings as the core, and the Heavenly Cycle Star Formation was formed. But now, there was not a single force that could take out hundreds of quasi-emperors. After all, quasi-emperors were not cabbages that could be easily found. However, he could use the Demon Summoning Banner as a substitute. In the Demon Summoning Banner, there were many powerful demon kings. Most importantly, in general, to form such a terrifying formation, it was necessary to transfer experts from all sides. It might be possible to use it for a decisive battle, but it was not enough to use it for protection during ordinary times. Because those quasi-emperors could be said to be of high status and power, and it was reasonable for them to obey orders during a battle. However, it was impossible to transform them into a formation during ordinary times, and it was also a great waste of manpower. But with the Demon Summoning Banner as the core, it was completely different. The Demon Summoning Banner could guard the center of the Divine Court for a long time. Once it was needed, it could be activated at any time, and the Demon Kings in the Demon Summoning Banner could also form a formation at any time, and form the Heavenly Cycle Star Formation. At that time, the defense of the Divine Court would be truly impregnable. Such a huge lineup of quasi-emperors naturally did not appear out of thin air, but Yi Shiwen had fed the flesh and blood of several emperor-rank experts to feed these demon kings. Otherwise, it would not be so simple. Since ancient times, no one could be as extravagant as Yi Shiwen. There was no need to mention the relationship between Yi Shiwen and Yi Wudi. Moreover, although he had the Heavenly Cycle Star Formation, the ancient heavenly court was no longer at its peak strength when it ruled the world. It was impossible to gather so many demon race quasi-emperors. It might be possible to reduce the scale by 10 times, but the power of the Heavenly Cycle Star Formation would be greatly reduced in that case. Without any hesitation, he handed over the diagram to Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen went to the ancient heavenly court. Yi Wudi also told him a piece of news. Within 1,000 years, he and young Kuan Ping would try to break through to the emperor level. Both of their skills could be said to be excellent, and they were the best among the peak quasi-emperors. They were only half a step away from the emperor level. In addition, they both had Taoist tools to protect them. It could be said that they were well prepared. If they did not break through now, they would not have any more confidence even after tens of thousands of years. In that case, why not just break through directly? Of course, both of them were Yi Shiwen's brothers. When they crossed the tribulation, Yi Shiwen would still protect them. However, Yi Shiwen could only protect them. Whether they could succeed or not, it would ultimately depend on themselves. With his protection, the success rate would be much higher than the average person. In this regard, Yi Shiwen only left a sentence: "I will wait for you to become emperors. There are still important things to discuss." After getting the Heavenly Cycle Star Formation, Yi Shiwen returned to the Divine Court and began to set up the formation. However, this was not as simple as setting up the formation. He also wanted to rebuild the foundation of the Divine Court. All along, the Divine Court had been expanding with the Hidden Valley as the core. This might have been suitable when Yi Shiwen had not become an emperor, but now, it seemed a little insufficient. Yi Shiwen used a portion of the rainbow living soil as the core and accelerated the growth of the rainbow living soil to the extreme, forming a huge world called the Martial Emperor Heaven. In the center of the Martial Emperor Heaven was the seedling of the World Tree. It took root in the rainbow living soil, absorbing the energy of the rainbow living soil to grow. This Martial Emperor Heaven was not a divine kingdom, but a real world. He had obtained inspiration from the battle with Emperor Hunyuan. He wanted to create a real world, not just a divine kingdom. As long as the master of a divine kingdom was still alive, the divine kingdom would be full of vitality. All the rules were based on the will of the master of the divine kingdom. Once the master of the divine kingdom died, the divine kingdom would also fall apart. However, the creation of heaven and earth was completely different. All the rules had to be completed so that the heavenly way could circulate and operate continuously. It was no different from the real world. Even if Yi Shiwen died one day, this world would not fall with him. There was another advantage of the creation of heaven and earth. Because the entire small world was in line with the outside world, the Great Way was also complete. With the operation of the heavenly way, it would slowly grow into a real world. During this process, Yi Shiwen, who was connected with the entire small world, could constantly comprehend the true meaning of the Great Way. And these comprehensions could also promote Yi Shiwen to continuously improve his strength and realm. Moreover, Yi Shiwen could also use the power of this world to fight. It could be said that there were many benefits. This was a path that Yi Shiwen had never thought of. This was because at his level of cultivation, every step he took forward had to depend on himself. There was no model for him to follow. Among the many sovereign emperors, there were differences in strength. However, in terms of the Great Tao, they had already reached the peak. Who was weaker than the other? They could only learn from each other. However, this was an extremely huge project. It was not an easy task to make the heavenly way in the small world operate on its own. Even with Yi Shiwen's current cultivation level, it would require a lot of energy. He vaguely realized that this might be a path, a way to achieve the ultimate Great Way. However, it should not be something that he could grasp at his realm level. It was just that he had used the rainbow living soil to forcibly open up such a small world. Before the small heavenly way could form a cycle, Yi Shiwen had to stay in this small world and preside over the operation of the Great Way. Yi Shiwen also used his great magic power to grab the divine court and forcibly placed it beside Wu Tian, forming a protective formation. This way, the backup plan that Yi Shiwen had left behind for the divine court could be considered to have taken shape. It could ensure the stability of divine court for countless years in the future. In divine court, although Yi Shiwen did not show his face, such a big matter as the entire divine court's relocation still attracted the attention of all the realms. Besides Yi Shiwen, even Yi Mo, who had just become an emperor, could not do such a thing. Moreover, Yi Mo, who had just become an emperor, was still in seclusion to consolidate his cultivation. This was also something that everyone knew. Very soon, everyone knew that Yi Shiwen was splitting the heavens and the earth apart. When they found out that Yi Shiwen had done this, many people could not help but fall silent. This was because they knew very well what a magnificent feat and miracle it was to split the heavens and the earth apart. It was simply like a miracle. Even in the past, they had not heard of anyone splitting the heavens and the earth apart. However, ever since this martial emperor had ascended to the throne, he had created too many miracles. It did not seem impossible for him to do another earth-shattering thing. And all this made the peak quasi-emperors, who had already touched the edge, even more anxious. They had not become emperors yet, but Yi Shiwen was already splitting the heavens and the earth apart. They were originally people in the same realm, but now they had been left so far behind. Although they did not dare to hope to fight against Yi Shiwen now, they did not want to be left behind by Yi Shiwen either. After this series of failures, finally, someone bravely took the first step. As the master of divine court, Yi Wudi stood up and challenged the Emperor Lord Heavenly Tribulation. He also invited everyone in the world to come and watch the Heavenly Tribulation. Many people heard this news and moved immediately, gathering outside the divine court. Yi Wudi's figure was above the divine court. All kinds of protective formations in the divine court were also activated. After all, there used to be many emperor lords here, so even if he directly went through the heavenly tribulation here, there was no need to worry that the ancient divine court would be destroyed. In the eyes of many people, especially those who also came from the emperor lord's inheritance, it was not only whether he became an emperor or not, but also whether they became emperors or not. This was because in the world, except for the emperor clan, Ji family, there had never been an example of an emperor being born among the descendants of an emperor lord. There were many emperor lords in the ancient divine court, but they were all people of the same generation. They were not the descendants of anyone, so they did not count. The relationship between Yi Mo and Yi Shiwen was the same, so they were not considered successful examples. For example, the Dragon Island and the ancient Phoenix realm were extremely glorious. However, they couldn't break away from this law. It was like a curse that firmly suppressed everyone. In the past, no matter how outstanding the people had been, they had all failed their tribulations in the end. It was like those sovereign emperors had absorbed the luck of an entire race or sect by themselves. As a result, there could no longer be another sovereign emperor among their descendants. Could Yi Wudi break this curse? Many people were waiting to see. The Lord of the Heavenly Court is going through a tribulation. There's no reason for a martial emperor not to come and protect him. Someone looked left and right, but didn't see Yi Shiwen's figure, so they couldn't help but ask. That's hard to say. Everyone knows that the martial emperor is creating the world. How could he have the energy to protect Yi Wudi? It's hard to say. After all, the martial emperor's cultivation is too profound and his realm is far beyond what we can imagine. Maybe he has a way to do it. For a moment, everyone was discussing spiritedly. Suddenly, a figure materialized in the sky and walked over step by step. Chapter 3003. When everyone saw the face of this person, they immediately bowed down. This person was none other than Yi Shiwen. They felt a powerful aura coming from Yi Shiwen's body. It was as if the Big Bang of the universe had given them a powerful aura. The martial emperor came in person. After Yi Shiwen's figure gradually walked past them, they finally breathed a sigh of relief. However, Yi Shiwen still appeared as some people expected. The relationship between the martial emperor and the Lord of the Heavenly Court is really good. It is said that they have gone through life and death together. This person had obviously just started cultivating in recent years. He did not know much about the things that happened 20,000 years ago. The martial emperor really came. Haha, I was wondering who lost a spiritual vein to me just now. This is impossible. Isn't the martial emperor going to create a new world? How does he have time to do this? No, you are all wrong. The martial emperor's real body is not here. This is just his incarnation. In a distant place, the Ice Emperor's gaze was also focused here. He might not pay attention to Yi Mo becoming the emperor, because it was nothing more than the icing on the cake for the divine court. However, if Yi Wudi became the emperor, it would be completely different. This meant that the heavenly court was about to regain everything it had lost. At that time, after the divine court, there would be another force that could contend with the Ice Palace. What, this is just an incarnation? Many people were instantly shocked. Just an incarnation was able to give them such a terrifying pressure, and it was even not inferior to the pressure of a sovereign monarch's. The Ice Emperor's brows slightly wrinkled as he felt even more pressure. He had also made rapid progress during this period of time. However, there was still a huge gap between him and Yi Shiwen. Even a mere doppelganger of Yi Shiwen could be mentioned in the same breath as him. However, although Yi Shiwen's incarnation was powerful, it could not hide from the Ice Emperor's eyes. After all, he was an emperor, and there was nothing he didn't know. It's just an incarnation, but it's enough to protect us. This person was Yi Shiwen's incarnation. At this time, the world in the divine court could not be separated from his original body, and Yi Mo was in closed-door training, so he had to do it himself. Yi Shiwen walked to Yi Wudi's side and handed him a yellow middle plum. According to Yi Mo's experience, a yellow middle plum could save a life at a critical moment. After handing over the yellow plum to Yi Wudi, Yi Shiwen retreated to the side and looked at the tribulation clouds gradually appearing in the sky. Then, endless thunder tribulation fell like a heavy rain towards Yi Wudi. Compared to Yi Mo's tribulation, Yi Wudi's tribulation wasn't much better. Magical lightning creatures rushed down from the clouds and fought with Yi Wudi. Although Yi Wudi was very strong, he was still dwarfed by such a large number. Even though he fought with all his might, he was soon seriously injured. In the battle, Yi Wudi directly displayed many supreme secret techniques of the heavenly court, many of which were thought to have been lost in the long passage of time. Some of them were indeed lost, but the demon emperor still taught them to Yi Wudi in the end. Although Yi Wudi was also very strong, he was not a monster like Yi Shiwen. It was impossible for him to be as invincible as Yi Shiwen. In the end, when he was halfway through the tribulation, he took the yellow middle plum that Yi Shiwen gave him, and barely managed to endure. Even so, it was still very difficult. Several times, even when Yi Shiwen thought Yi Wudi would not be able to persevere, he still persisted. In the end, the heavenly tribulation dispersed, and Yi Wudi finally succeeded. In the world, there was another demon emperor. With Yi Shiwen in charge, naturally, no one dared to have any ideas about Yi Wudi. In the end, he became a demon emperor and was known as the Demon King, the supreme monarch of the demon race. In the world, there was another expert at the level of an emperor, and it was from the ancient emperor's inheritance. Yi Wudi's success made many people very excited. At the very least, it proved that the terrifying curse that everyone thought did not actually exist, or at least, it did not exist for now. However, before everyone could take a breather, in the heavenly court, another person underwent the tribulation. This person was none other than young Kuan Pung. Everyone felt helpless when they thought about it. Just one demon king was not enough, and now there was another one. Moreover, young Kuan Pung had a very powerful background, and his bloodline was even more noble. He was the descendant of the demon master of the past. Compared to Yi Wudi, the heavenly tribulation that young Kuan Pung triggered was not at all small. In fact, it was slightly stronger. It might have something to do with his bloodline. Young Kuan Peng's method of transcending the tribulation was also very ferocious. He directly transformed into his original form, and an incomparably huge Peng shuttled through the lightning tribulation. From time to time, he transformed into a huge fish of the northern underworld and rushed into the tribulation clouds to fight against the heavenly tribulation. Even though his physique was considered one of the strongest in the world, under the heavenly tribulation, his skin and flesh were still split open. This also made many of the peak emperor-level experts who boasted of their strong physiques shudder in fear. Young Kuan Peng's physique was definitely stronger than theirs, but he was still struck miserably. If it were them, they would probably have died long ago. Was it really just wishful thinking to want to become an emperor? In fact, the gap between many people and those who had become emperors was not very big. In fact, they were even stronger than those who had not become emperors. But what use was that? In the heavenly tribulation, it was not enough to be strong enough. It also depended on luck. Unless one forcefully transcended the heavenly tribulation like Yi Shiwen did, then there was a possibility. And even though young Kuan Pung had the yin-yang diagram of life and death to protect himself, he was still severely injured. Those peak Emperor-level experts who did not have a Dao weapon to protect themselves all turned pale. They did not have a Dao weapon to protect themselves. Wasn't that courting death? Young Kuan Peng also encountered danger time and time again. In the end, Demon Master Kuan Peng actually appeared in the world. Demon Master Kuan Peng, who had not attained the Dao, already had the ability to look down on the world. At this time, the heavenly Dao revived the mark that he had left behind in the long river of history. This was the greatest test. Everything that young Kuan Peng learned came from the inheritance left behind by Demon Master Kuan Peng. Kuan Peng was his own ancestor. Almost all of his martial arts moves were seen through by him. One could imagine how difficult this battle was. Young Kuan Peng almost killed him when he could not hold on any longer. Even Yi Shiwen was almost tempted to ignore the heavenly Dao's warning and rush into the heavenly tribulation to save young Kuan Peng. In the end, he forcibly suppressed this thought because he knew that this was a path that he had to walk. Young Kuan Peng had inherited the bloodline of Demon Master Kuan Peng. Naturally, he was extremely noble and powerful. But at the same time, if he wanted to walk his own path, it would be even more difficult. He was not like Yi Wudi. At least Yi Wudi and the Demon Emperor were not of the same race, so he did not need to be suppressed by the bloodline. At this time, if young Kuan Peng could not defeat Demon Master Kuan Peng and walk his own path, then even if he could survive the heavenly tribulation, he would be useless. That was why Yi Shiwen could forcibly suppress his desire to attack. This battle was far longer than Yi Wudi's. If he had been like Yi Shiwen and passed the heavenly tribulation while being besieged, he would probably have died. This battle lasted for 3 years. At the beginning, young Kuan Peng was completely suppressed. He could not be compared to a peerless figure like Kuan Peng. After all, relatively speaking, one was a figure who created a supreme path, while the other was a junior who inherited the legacy of his predecessor and followed the path of his predecessor. This was the biggest difference in their nature. That was why young Kuan Peng could not suppress Demon Master Kuan Peng at all. But as the battle progressed, the talent in young Kuan Peng's bloodline was also stimulated. Slowly, he began to transcend the fixed path of Demon Master Kuan Peng and walked his own path. He began to turn the situation around bit by bit. In the end, young Kuan Peng defeated the mark that Demon Master Kuan Peng had created and successfully became the new Demon Master. This time, young Kuan Peng caused a greater commotion than when Yi Wudi became the emperor. Many people were shocked. The sky was filled with multicolored light. The world gave birth to the second Demon Master. This was the second time after countless years that someone from Demon Master Kuan Peng's bloodline became the emperor. Even though they had the title of the top 10 bloodline of the vicious beasts, in reality, this bloodline was not enough for them to prove their Dao and become the new Demon Master. Young Kuan Peng's ascension to emperor made many demons overjoyed. To them, with young Kuan Peng's ascension to emperor and the existence of the Demon Lord, the demon race now had 2 emperors. In the entire universe, apart from the Tian race that had been sealed and exiled, only the demon race had 2 emperors at the same time. For a time, this was unprecedented, even surpassing the human race, which was originally at its peak. Of course, because of Yi Shiwen's existence, the demon clan did not dare to hope that the demon clan could suppress the human clan. Moreover, everyone knew that the relationship between Demon Lord, Demon Master, Martial Emperor, and Emperor Mo was very good. It was not like many years ago, where there was endless competition between races. Compared to many years ago, the 3 major races had learned to live by compromise. They did not have to defeat all forces to rule the world to survive. But even so, the Demon Clan was still excited. The existence of Demon Lord and Demon Master was enough for them to complete the revival of the Demon Clan and become one of the strongest races in the world again. The Demon Master's success made the demon race, which had yet to produce an imperial emperor, anxious. The demon race, along with the human race and the demon race, were one of the three major races in the world. However, apart from Yemo, they had yet to produce an imperial emperor. This was unbearable, so the demon clan began to act. Chapter 3004. Looking at the current situation, both the human clan and the demon clan had produced emperor kings one after another. Especially the demon clan had produced 2 emperor kings. Although the human clan only had Yi Shiwen, it was enough to suppress the world. No one dared to disobey him. Moreover, although Yemo was from the demon clan, he was only loyal to Yi Shiwen. It was impossible for him to stand on the side of the demon clan. Judging from the current situation, although it was impossible for a large-scale race war to break out again, in order to fight for survival space, other clans did not have emperor kings. However, it was unforgivable that the demon clan, which once dominated the world, did not have an emperor king. Therefore, the demon clan began to prepare. No matter what, as Yi Wudi once said to Yi Shiwen, there was no room for further improvement at that point. There was no difference between preparing for 10 years and preparing for 100,000 years. Moreover, many people faintly felt that the number of emperor kings in this world was limited. If someone else occupied a position first, then others would fail. The first to choose to go through the tribulation was Yuan of the original demon clan. From the moment he appeared, he only had this one word. Everyone only knew that he was Yuan, but no one knew where he came from or where he came from. However, as soon as Yuan was born, he was comparable to those old demons who had been famous for many years. He was unimaginably powerful. Some people said that Yuan was actually the son of the original demon lord, while others said that he was the reincarnation of the original demon lord's spirit. However, because the original demon clan was tight-lipped about this, everyone could only guess. On the day that Yuan crossed the tribulation, he attracted the attention of countless people. Although Yi Wudi and young Kuan Peng became emperor, Yi Shiwen's contribution was also indispensable. Everyone wanted to see if others could succeed without Yi Shiwen. Yuan was very powerful, and he had the protection of the heaven-devouring demon jar. After Yi Shiwen became emperor king, he returned the word demon to the original demon clan as promised, because he no longer needed it. Yuan's tribulation had been very difficult. He had even died once. In the end, Yi Shiwen had stepped in when he was on the verge of death. Yi Shiwen had helped him a little, and had allowed him to pass through the most difficult part of the tribulation. It could be said that Yi Shiwen had returned the favor to the original devil clan. Another demon emperor became an emperor, and he was called Emperor Yuan. At the same time, it was also because of this relationship that even though they were both emperors, Emperor Yuan immediately went to visit Yi Shiwen after becoming an emperor to thank Yi Shiwen for helping him during his tribulation. Suddenly Yi Shiwen became famous. Everyone understood that in crossing the tribulation, there were many times when it was just a hair's breadth. However, if there was someone to help, then it would be completely different. Take Emperor Yuan for example. Without Yi Shiwen's help, he might have failed. But with Yi Shiwen's help, he would succeed. Moreover, there was only one person in the entire universe who could do it, and that was Yi Shiwen. He was the only one who dared to interfere with the heavenly tribulation. The others didn't even dare to resist the heavenly tribulation. Even the Ice Empress, Emperor Mo, Demon Lord, Demon Master, and the others who had become emperors didn't dare to do so. In particular, the Ice Empress had directly stated that they did not dare to interfere with the operation of the heavenly tribulation. Otherwise, they would suffer the wrath of the heavens. Even an emperor monarch was extremely fearful of this, because for mortals, the heavenly Tao almost didn't exist. Even if mortals disrespected the heavens, they would not actually be punished. But for cultivators, the higher their strength, the more they could feel the existence of the heavenly Tao. At the level of the emperor monarch, they could almost clearly feel the existence of the heavenly Tao. Once they did something that violated the rules of the heavenly Tao, it would almost immediately trigger a backlash from the heavenly Tao. In fact, Yi Shiwen's intervention this time was also met with the counterattack of the heavenly Tao. It was just that his intervention was not too powerful. Coupled with his cultivation, he forcefully blocked it, but he still suffered a backlash. Even when he helped Yi Mo previously, he only gave him a heavenly treasure like the yellow middle plum in advance. This was the first time that Yi Shiwen really interfered with the heavenly Tao's heavenly tribulation, and he was severely warned by the heavenly Tao. Even Yi Shiwen, who was not injured much in the previous battle, was directly injured. It could be considered as repaying the favor of the original demon clan before they became emperors. Yi Shiwen didn't like to owe people favors. At that time, the old patriarch of the original demon clan almost went against the opinions of the masses, and unexpectedly made an agreement with Yi Shiwen that was obviously beneficial to him. Yi Shiwen also remembered this in his heart. When everyone knew about this past, they had nothing to say. Because not everyone would do this, and most people didn't have such foresight. Who could be sure that Yi Shiwen would eventually become emperors? If Yi Shiwen failed, then all their previous plans would be completely ruined. It was precisely because of this that the past became particularly precious at this time. Their bet at that time had now reaped rich returns. It was even unimaginable that because of Yi Shiwen's intervention, they had obtained an emperor-monarch. Nothing was more precious than this. However, there was no way for others to ask Yi Shiwen to protect them. After all, they didn't have such a deep friendship, nor did they have such foresight. But it was also because of this matter that Yi Shiwen's reputation in the myriad heavens and realms became even more resounding. The title of the number one among the emperors was unsurprisingly given to him. The gap in cultivation could be clearly seen at this time. Emperor Yuan's success also stimulated many people. Counting it, there were already 6 emperors in the world now. According to the number of emperors in the world in the previous few times, there were probably not many spots left for them. Since the Heavenly Way was afraid that the existence of so many emperors at the same time would cause the world to decline, it would naturally have a limit on the number. This had become a recognized fact. After Emperor Yuan, a golden dragon king that had existed for countless years on Dragon Island crossed the tribulation. This golden dragon king was very old. It could even be traced back to the period when the ancestral dragon was still active. At that time, he was already active on Dragon Island. Later, he gradually retreated behind the scenes. In the long history, he had appeared several times to save Dragon Island from danger. He could be said to be an extremely tyrannical senior. He had even fought against an emperor-monarch with the ancestral dragon seal. Although he was defeated and fled in the end, his tyrannical strength was also recognized by the myriad heavens and realms, especially those old antique. As long as they were slightly older, there was almost no one who didn't recognize this golden dragon king. In the long history, other than the ancestral dragon, this was the second time someone tried to become an emperor after a long time. However, in the end, the golden dragon king failed miserably. Under the heavenly tribulation, his entire body disintegrated. Even though the physical body of the golden dragon race could be said to be the most tyrannical existence in the myriad heavens and realms, and with the protection of a Tao tool like the ancestral dragon seal, he couldn't make it in the end. He was only a breath away from dying, but in the end, he was still struck to death by the lightning tribulation. When he failed, 3 peak quasi-emperor level dragon kings flew out from Dragon Island and tried to interfere with the heavenly tribulation. They wanted to save the golden dragon king, but they were instantly smashed to pieces by the heavenly tribulation. This heavenly tribulation was 10 times more terrifying than when the golden dragon king crossed the tribulation. They didn't even survive a single move and died tragically under the heavenly tribulation. It was only at this time that everyone realized what kind of price they had to pay to interfere with the heavenly tribulation. In the myriad heavens and realms, perhaps only Yi Shiwen dared to interfere with the heavenly tribulations so directly. This also proved that it wasn't that simple to become an emperor. Both skill and luck were indispensable. One definitely couldn't succeed just because they had prepared well beforehand. In other words, whoever was more powerful would be able to succeed. In terms of cultivation, this old Golden Dragon King was even above Emperor Yuan. But in the end, Emperor Yuan succeeded, and this old Golden Dragon King failed. Everyone on Dragon Island was filled with grief and indignation. But who could they blame? Heaven and Earth? Or Yi Shiwen? They didn't dare to. Hence, it was precisely because of this that they could only swallow their tears. Who asked them to interfere with the heavenly tribulation? Not only did they lose an old Golden Dragon King, but they also lost 3 peak quasi-emperor level Dragon Kings. This was a huge loss, enough to make Dragon Island feel heartache for a long time. In the face of such an action by the Dragon Island, someone once said that listening to the Ice Emperor's evaluation was stupid and courting death. Even he didn't dare to interfere with the operation of the heavenly tribulation, but this Dragon Island actually wanted to interfere with the operation of the heavenly tribulation. Did they think that they were martial emperors? Since then, no one dared to interfere with the heavenly tribulation. Even Yi Shiwen paid a certain price after his interference and recuperated for a period of time. And this was because he didn't interfere too deeply. Otherwise, with Yi Shiwen's cultivation, it would only be a matter of time before he died. After the failure of this old Golden Dragon King, the footsteps of the various experts didn't stop. No one wanted to be a quasi-emperor forever, especially those old antique. They had lived long enough, and living was no longer their first thought. If they couldn't become an emperor, then what was the point of living like this for 1 billion years? After the old Golden Dragon King, another ancestor of the Qilin clan appeared. A 5-colored Qilin at the peak quasi-emperor level appeared. Its cultivation of the 5 elements was earth-shattering. It could be said that the 5-colored Qilin was almost the most tyrannical bloodline besides the ancestor of the Qilin clan, the first Qilin in the world, the 7-colored Qilin. It was also the only remaining senior of the Qilin clan. Before the first war against the heavens, it had already led the Qilin army to contend for hegemony. As a result, when this 5-colored Qilin had just crossed the heavenly tribulation, it triggered the most terrifying 5 elements heavenly tribulation. Even though this 5-colored Qilin's 5 elements mysterious technique had been cultivated to an unimaginable level and could be said to be unparalleled in the world, it still fell under the heavenly tribulation. After a series of people appeared, the heavens and the realms discovered that there were so many terrifying experts hidden and had never appeared. Chapter 3005. These experts were people who had experienced countless tribulations. For many years, they had hidden themselves in the 10,000 worlds and rarely made a move. In fact, they had never even made a move before. Even when the heavenly clan invaded and the battle was at its most intense, they were not alarmed. But now, the period of imprisonment was over. In order to become emperors, they all appeared one by one. This could be said to be the best opportunity to become an emperor in all of eternity. After a while, the positions of emperors would be filled. If they wanted to become emperors, who knew how many years they would have to wait? After the failure of the Qilin race's patriarch, a monstrous corpse energy surged in the most remote area of the various world. A zombie that had been sleeping for countless years awakened. Almost immediately, everyone in the various worlds was alarmed. No one knew how many years this ancestor of the zombie tribe had been sleeping for. As soon as it woke up, it sucked up the blood energy of all the living beings in the galaxy. Ha ha ha, it's finally my turn. After sleeping for so many years, the shackles of the heavenly Tao have finally loosened? I'm going to become the #1 corpse emperor since ancient times. That pair of evil eyes were full of desire for life, and its pale face was full of a ferocious expression. This zombie, which was almost close to becoming a corpse emperor, woke up from its endless slumber. As soon as it woke up, it set off a monstrous corpse disaster that swept through countless galaxies. This zombie king commanded countless zombies to sweep all the way, and it looked like it was about to destroy half of the world. Finally, Emperor Yuan, who was still in seclusion to consolidate his cultivation, was alarmed. In the face of such a terrifying corpse disaster, Emperor Yuan certainly wouldn't remain indifferent. Moreover, the corpse disaster was about to spread to the demon world. So Emperor Yuan made his move. The power of an Emperor Lord could be imagined, how terrifying it was. Even if Emperor Yuan had just become an emperor, his strength was far beyond everyone's imagination. But the result was completely beyond everyone's expectations. The zombie king that everyone thought could be easily killed by Emperor Yuan didn't end up as everyone had imagined. On the contrary, Emperor Yuan was defeated. This result was beyond everyone's expectations. This zombie king was actually an emperor lord in its previous life. Soon, everyone figured out why. This zombie king was actually an emperor lord in its previous life, and it was a very powerful emperor lord. Just his physical body alone was enough to compete with Emperor Yuan. After all, Emperor Yuan had just become an emperor not long ago. He hadn't even completed the construction of his emperor body yet, so he suffered a big loss in this melee. His body was almost smashed to pieces. He was saved by the Ice Empress, Yao Jun, and the others who rushed over. Although they belonged to different factions, since they were imperial monarchs, they were the ones who made and upheld the rules. This zombie king was clearly the destroyer of order and was the common enemy of many imperial monarchs. It was precisely because of this that everyone truly saw the terror of this zombie king. This zombie king was an imperial emperor in his previous life, but just that alone was not enough to make Emperor Yuan suffer such a huge loss. What was truly terrifying was that he had cultivated some kind of secret technique that allowed him to summon back the Tao fruit of his previous life that had already dissipated from the river of time. After fusing with the Tao fruit from his past life, he temporarily possessed the cultivation of his past life. It was precisely because of this that he was able to suppress a group of sovereign emperors by himself and display a shocking and terrifying aura. This aura even made the myriad worlds fall into despair. Sure enough, compared to the ancient imperial monarchs, although these imperial monarchs who had just become emperors were tyrannical, they were obviously far inferior. Emperor Yuan, the Demon Lord, the Demon Master, and the Ice Empress, the four emperors working together to attack this zombie king, were not enough to suppress it. Later on, they even alarmed Emperor Yemo, who was in seclusion. Even when the 5 emperors joined forces, they still couldn't suppress him. His opponent's cultivation base was too strong. This wasn't a battle of his current life. Instead, he was directly summoning the Tao fruit from his previous life. This was a heaven-defying secret art, a secret art that he had researched in his previous life. At this moment, it was absolutely effective. Everyone was in despair. Even an imperial monarch was not omnipotent. Ha ha, it seems that it is destined that I will become an emperor in 2 lives. This zombie king laughed loudly, his eyes flashing with a blood-colored light. He didn't care about the existence of the other 5 people at all and wanted to transcend the tribulation in front of everyone. The heavenly tribulation was nothing to him. Don't forget, he had now summoned back the Tao fruit of his previous life, which was equivalent to transcending the heavenly tribulation with the body of an imperial monarch. The difficulty was much lower. Once he became an emperor and merged with the Tao fruit of his previous life, his cultivation would also leap and become even more terrifying. Go, we can't let him transcend the heavenly tribulation and become an emperor. Otherwise, we won't be able to suppress him. Yemo hurriedly shouted. His expression was very solemn. After he became an emperor, this was the first time he encountered such a troublesome existence. Even the imperial monarchs were not afraid. It was really shocking. It was unknown how such a frightening corpse plague could be raised. Ha ha, you want to stop me? Don't even think about it. This zombie king was incomparably ferocious, directly forcing the 5 imperial monarchs to retreat. Its strength was simply unimaginable. Even if it only stole the Tao fruit of his previous life and couldn't last long, at this moment, it still made the 5 imperial monarchs helpless. I'm afraid you won't have this chance. A cold breath came from afar, followed by a figure rushing towards the zombie king at lightning speed. Bang! A palm slapped out of the void, directly slapping the zombie king's body. The zombie king, who originally did not show any signs of weakness despite being besieged by the 5 imperial monarchs, was directly sent flying thousands of miles away. A bit of blood flowed from the corner of its mouth. Then, a light green figure appeared in front of everyone. Martial Emperor, it's the Martial Emperor. It's really him. At this time, we can only rely on the Martial Emperor. Yes, this zombie king is too cruel. He actually absorbed all the vitality of a galaxy as soon as he woke up. If we let him continue to cultivate, it will be terrible. Even if we add up all of the heavens and realms, it won't be enough for him to cultivate. The appearance of a zombie king alone was not a big deal. The most terrifying thing was that this zombie king was extremely cruel and clearly did not abide by the rules. He was unlike the other imperial monarchs, who would not do anything to endanger the common people when they reached that stage. Martial Emperor, kill him. We must not let him live. Many people could not help but feel tears welling up in their eyes when they saw this figure. He had finally appeared at the critical moment. Originally, everyone thought that he would definitely not appear. After all, he was in the creation of the world. He should not appear at this critical moment. You are the Martial Emperor? The zombie king's blood-red eyes were extremely cold. Although he had been asleep for a long time, it did not mean that he was completely ignorant of the outside world. Zombies and spirits from all over the world had always been under his control. Soon, he knew what had happened recently. It could be said that this was the most amazing person that had appeared in the heavens and realms over the years. In a short period of time, he had pacified the war everywhere and defeated the heavenly clan that had left the heavens and realms helpless. This was also an extraordinary and ruthless person. Waves of golden light appeared on the body of the zombie king, which turned into a golden armor that protected him. This was his special great Tao. He had to be cautious when facing a martial emperor. He stared at Yi Shiwen and sized him up a few times. He sneered and said, "Martial Emperor, this has nothing to do with you. We could have minded our own business." Minded our own business. Even if you are something, do you think you are worthy of being on an equal footing with me? Yi Shiwen said disdainfully. Even if the zombie king in front of him was terrifying and had harmed the heavens and realms, he was still no different from a jade ant in front of him. The zombie king's expression changed slightly, and then he said fiercely, "It seems that you are not giving me face." Giving you face? If you were in your previous life, you might have been on an equal footing with me. However, you have already fallen long ago. Now you are just an evil spirit born from his corpse. You want to be on an equal footing with something that even the heavens and earth cannot tolerate? I think you are really crazy. Yi Shiwen said coldly without any trace of politeness. It seems that we have nothing to talk about. Yi Shiwen, other people may not know your details, but do you think that I do not know? Your real body is in the divine court, right? But now you're just a spirit incarnation. How dare you talk to me like this? You're too arrogant. The zombie king saw through Yi Shiwen's lies at a glance. Indeed, according to what he said, Yi Shiwen, who was creating the world, did not have time to spare to kill him. Otherwise, all the previous efforts would be in vain. This was a price that the zombie king was absolutely unwilling to pay. If Yi Shiwen's real body came, he might really be a little afraid. However, it was just a spirit, and it was impossible to make him retreat. Besides, you have your way, and I also have my bridge. Do you think that you can't let others become emperors after you become emperors? The zombie king said fiercely. Of course not. It's fine if others become emperors, but if you become emperors, you will only bring endless corpses to the myriad world. So, I have no choice but to kill you in advance. Yi Shiwen was not annoyed, but just said indifferently, "Ha, it's really ridiculous. Yi Shiwen, those are just some ants. They are lucky to be able to become this king's food. What else is there to be picky about?" The zombie king coldly said, as if it had heard the funniest joke in the world. "Stubborn." Yi Shiwen said, "I thought that you were an emperor in your previous life. In this life, you have given birth to spiritual wisdom under extremely difficult circumstances. It can be regarded as heaven's favor, and you should be able to achieve Tao again in the future. However, it's a pity that you met me. Without me, you can be your corpse emperor, but since I am here, then don't even think about it. You are too much. Die." The zombie king roared and blasted towards Yi Shiwen. Chapter 3006. The aura of the King of Corpses exploded in an instant, diffusing and spreading throughout the entire heavens and realms, so that the whole world could sense the monstrous aura of this peerless monster. Especially after he found the Tao fruit of his previous life, he was even more like a corpse emperor, unparalleled in the world. The entire heavens and realms trembled and trembled under his monstrous aura. This attack went straight for Yi Shiwen's head, and its speed was also extremely fast, like a bolt of lightning wrapped in endless corpse energy. Boom! The space of the heavens and realms began to fluctuate violently like the surface of water, exploding in all directions. This attack directly bombarded in front of Yi Shiwen, almost directly breaking his defense. Yi Shiwen's eyes focused, and a terrifying power shot out, as if the world was splitting apart, the birth of the universe incomparably deep. On his body, the robe of time bloomed out the time domain, covering him in it. However, he himself was like an ordinary person. Every move he made was extremely natural. There was no pressure, nor was there any aura that made people tremble. It was as if he was only borrowing the power of the heavenly Tao to unleash such terrifying fluctuations. Many people almost instinctively knelt down. It was not forced, but it came from the bottom of their hearts. They just felt that they should bow down, and so they bowed down. Everything came from the bottom of their hearts, and was not forced by the might. They were extremely sincere. Over the years, Yi Shiwen had ruled the heavens and realms, and had long established a majesty that would not be worn down by thousands of tribulations. The cultivation of the martial emperor is getting deeper and deeper. Ice Emperor couldn't help but say. From the time he first became an emperor, the martial emperor Yi Shiwen was already very strong, but now he was even more tyrannical and unfathomable than before. Yes, but with the martial emperor here, this king of corpses has no room to make a move. It will definitely die. Emperor Yuan said. He was different from Ice Emperor. He was able to become an emperor, to a large extent, because martial Emperor Yi Shiwen intervened in the heavenly tribulation and saved him, so he was grateful. Because he had advanced into the emperor realm, he understood better what kind of responsibility Yi Shiwen had when he intervened in the heavenly tribulation. Everyone also showed a somewhat relaxed expression. With the existence of Yi Shiwen, the King of Corpses could not cause trouble, so they naturally felt much more relaxed. It seemed that she had developed a habit of relying on Yi Shiwen over the years. The Corpse King hadn't expected that its all-out attack wouldn't even be able to break through Yi Shiwen's defense. Although it had the protection of the time robe, it wasn't Yi Shiwen after all. It was Yi Shiwen's spirit incarnation. If he couldn't even take down Yi Shiwen's spirit incarnation easily, he could almost imagine how terrifying Yi Shiwen would be. For the first time, he realized that this era was not as weak as he had originally thought. He had thought that by relying on the fruit of the way he had been an emperor in his previous life, he could move unhindered and create a unique era that belonged to him. He didn't expect that there would be such a ruthless person. Yi Shiwen walked step by step towards the direction of the Corpse King. His eyes were tranquil and overflowed with a bright light. Everywhere he passed, the sky and the earth would fall with multicolored light. It didn't look like a wisp of soul incarnation at all. It seemed as if the true body of an emperor had descended. Perhaps it was because this primordial spirit incarnation was already comparable to a sovereign emperor. The cultivation of the martial emperor is too terrifying. There's no way to estimate his cultivation. Many people could only exclaim. In the endless army of corpse kings, some quasi-emperor level corpse kings trembled and wanted to escape. Yi Shiwen's cultivation of the martial emperor made them feel terrified. They were afraid. Originally, these corpse kings were also extremely powerful warriors. Later, they died and became corpse kings. They were originally in hibernation everywhere. In the era of the emperor, no corpse king dared to be presumptuous, let alone set off such a huge corpse riot. Especially in the past tens of thousands of years, Yi Shiwen's reputation had been heard even in their hibernation. Now that they had seen it with their own eyes, Yi Shiwen was not only powerful, he was even more powerful than the rumors. How could they not be afraid? Everywhere Yi Shiwen passed, countless power of thunder wantonly came out. These corpse kings and countless zombie armies emitted green smoke. Their flesh and blood were all purified by these power of thunder. This army of zombies that had shaken half of the world had been cleanly annihilated by Yi Shiwen. Ah! The screams of zombies could be heard everywhere. Their souls flew out one after another. They had been contaminated by the corpse poison, but under the illumination of the multicolored light around Yi Shiwen's body, they returned to their original appearance. Finally, Yi Shiwen's soul ferried them from the afterlife. Thank you, martial emperor! The dead spirits that were controlled expressed their gratitude one after another before disappearing into the endless void to be reincarnated. When these creatures were controlled, their bodies were out of control, and they were in incomparable pain. Now that Yi Shiwen had rescued them from the 18 levels of hell, how could they not be grateful? Yi Shiwen, you will pay the price. The Corpse King's eyes were cold, looking at Yi Shiwen, and directly pointed a finger. The corpse energy filled the sky, turned into a mass of light, and blasted towards Yi Shiwen. Bang! But it was completely blocked by Yi Shiwen. Sword. Yi Shiwen grabbed endless sword energy from the void. At this time, the sword talisman completely condensed at this time, forming a terrifying Taoist sword. This terrifying Taoist sword in Yi Shiwen's hand emitted a burst of amazing sword aura. Then, Yi Shiwen suddenly slashed down with the sword. In an instant, the world shook violently. A shocking sword aura slashed out and directly turned into sword clouds that filled the sky. It ignited the void. He directly used a heavy hand and was very decisive. Bang! This Corpse King tried to defend, but all its defenses were useless in front of Yi Shiwen. It was directly pierced by the sword, and a huge bloody hole was blasted in its body. The huge body of the Corpse King flew out directly. Impossible, how can you be so strong? Until now, the Corpse King still couldn't believe it. How could a wisp of spirit be so strong? Stupid, you are also a person who became an emperor in the previous life, and now you have summoned back the Tao fruit of the previous life. Don't you understand? Although my body is not here, I am still the ruler of this world, and I can borrow the power of the world, and you, in front of the world, are too small. Yi Shiwen said coldly. Impossible. The Corpse King roared. Even if you're a reigning emperor, it's impossible for you to mobilize such a powerful force. Before his voice fell, his whole body flew out again, and he was slashed by Yi Shiwen's sword. Bang! 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 Intense and terrifying collisions occurred again and again, causing an unimaginable shockwave. The Corpse King's tyrannical and terrifying body was actually covered in dense cracks, and its entire body was almost blasted into pieces. Blood sprayed out. In front of Yi Shiwen, he was still too far away, and he was not a match at all. Freeze! Yi Shiwen shouted. Everyone clearly felt that all the power between the heaven and the earth had been imprisoned in an instant. Then Yi Shiwen stretched out his hand, and suddenly penetrated the void, and grabbed the body of the Corpse King, and then his hands suddenly tore out endless golden light, and in an instant, everything was given to 4 years old. A figure flew out of the body of the Corpse King, and they saw that it was also an invincible figure wearing a royal robe. "Thank you for your help, brother." The figure bowed slightly to Yi Shiwen, and then his whole body dissipated in the world. Everyone stared at that figure. Could it be, that is the Emperor Dao fruit of the previous life of the Corpse King? Many people suddenly understood what it was. The reason why the King of Corpses could wreak havoc in the world was because of the Emperor's Dao fruit of its previous incarnation. It could allow it to possess the battle prowess of the Emperor level for a short period of time. But now Yi Shiwen had taken away the Dao fruit of its previous incarnation and released it. So, this King of Corpses was truly doomed. Even one of the 5 great Emperor Lords had the ability to defeat and kill it. Seeing this, everyone finally felt relieved. The zombie calamity was finally over. Even if the undead king was still there, it wouldn't be able to cause any more waves. Yi Shiwen nodded slightly, and the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. This was the Dao fruit of the previous life of the Corpse King, which was summoned by him from the previous life with a secret technique. Although the Corpse King was the spiritual wisdom born from the body of the dead Emperor Dao fruit, but in essence, it was already a different person. That Emperor Dao fruit naturally had no intention of helping, and was even extremely angry that it was summoned from a distant era. Now that Yi Shiwen had released it, it could be said that it completely owed Yi Shiwen a favor. Roar! The Corpse King continued to roar angrily, but it was useless. After losing the Dao fruit of the previous life, its strength dropped rapidly, and it was constantly falling. It was not Yi Shiwen's opponent at all. In just a few moves, it had already fallen back to the peak of the Quasi-Emperor realm. "Ah, I will not let you go!" The Corpse King roared and threatened Yi Shiwen. Puff! On the head of this Corpse King, there was suddenly a bloody hole. Opposite it, it was Yi Shiwen who blasted a bloody hole in its head with a finger. Originally, even if its head was blown up, it should not be so easy to be killed, but it happened that Yi Shiwen made a move, erased its imprint, and killed it in one blow. Without the Emperor Dao fruit of the previous life, it was too weak when facing Yi Shiwen, and it was simply too vulnerable. In order to avoid continuing to cause trouble, it's better to release you too. Yi Shiwen pinched a mysterious seal with both hands, and then a burst of amazing light bloomed from his body, completely releasing the body of this Corpse King. The Corpse King's monarch body also turned into nothingness under the light. Chapter 3007. This corpse disaster was so easily quelled. This was also beyond everyone's expectations. Although many people had already admitted that Yi Shiwen was indeed very strong, but at this point, they still had to admit that Yi Shiwen was far more powerful than they had imagined. Such a powerful Corpse King even forced several great emperors to a corner. In the end, in Yi Shiwen's hands, it was so vulnerable that it was defeated almost instantly. Even the great Emperor Lords were equally shocked. Yi Shiwen had quelled the corpse calamity with just a wisp of his spirit. This had greatly stimulated them. At their level, they naturally understood that this was definitely not because Yi Shiwen's own strength was too strong, but because he had borrowed the power of heaven and earth. Yi Shiwen's realm was higher, and he could mobilize more power of heaven and earth. Because of this, they felt that Yi Shiwen was even more unfathomable, and they also had the intention to catch up. And when they all thought that it should be time to disperse, Yi Shiwen suddenly said, "Since everyone is here, There are some things, I will tell you all at once. I don't know what martial emperor has to ask, said Emperor Yuan. Among the 5 great emperors present, Emperor Mo, Demon Lord, and Demon Master were almost on the same side as Yi Shiwen, so there was no need to be so polite. In other words, Yi Shiwen being so polite was actually being polite to them. It's like this. There are 2 things in total. The first thing is that I hope that everyone can join hands with me to strengthen the seal of the Tian clan. This time, the Tian clan has escaped and caused a calamity for the common people. I think that everyone would not want the Tian clan to escape again, Yi Shiwen said. Everyone suddenly looked at each other. It turned out that Yi Shiwen was talking about this matter. Originally, they thought that Yi Shiwen would say something difficult. However, thinking about it, although the Heavenly Clan was sealed, it was sealed by Yi Shiwen alone. It was inevitable that it was somewhat insufficient. At this time, they were already the rulers of the myriad worlds. Naturally, they didn't want to return to the original situation. Moreover, there were many Emperor Lords in the Tian clan. If they all came through space, they might not be a match for them. This is what we should do, the Ice Empress said. Her words represented the opinions of the emperors. That's great, Yi Shiwen said with a smile, but this is only one of them. There is another matter that I also hope to obtain the help of fellow friends. I'm sure you all still remember the matter of Emperor Primordial Chaos's invasion. That's right, we still remember, Emperor Yuan said. Emperor Hun Yuan himself isn't an existence of the myriad world. Moreover, his strength is even more profound and dreadful. He can pose a huge threat to us even if he doesn't descend in person, Yi Shiwen said. All the Emperor Lords nodded. They also agreed with Yi Shiwen's statement because this was not a threat, but a fact. If it wasn't for Yi Shiwen, they might not be a match for Emperor Primordius even if they joined forces. The truth was cruel. That's why I've thought of a way, and that is to completely seal off the myriad heavens. After that, Emperor Primordius shouldn't be able to come in, and to achieve this step, I need the help of everyone. Yi Shiwen said. No problem, it's my duty, but when does the martial emperor want to do it? Emperor Yuan asked. It will still take some time. When my main body comes out of seclusion, I will naturally inform all of you. I hope that all of you will not refuse. Yi Shiwen said. No problem. Everyone agreed. All of this was not only to help Yi Shiwen, but also to help themselves. They also didn't want Emperor Primordius to come again one day. Thank you very much. After saying that, Yi Shiwen had completely turned into a sky full of rays of light and disappeared completely, leaving only a time robe, which flew out directly in the direction of the divine court with the rays of light that filled the sky. At this time, everyone finally dispersed, and the chaos of the corpse calamity that wreaked havoc in the world finally came to an end. The martial emperor quelled the corpse calamity, and the world seemed to have returned to peace. At this time, everyone seemed to have reacted. If one wanted to become an emperor, they would not be suppressed by the Qin emperor, but if one wanted to cause chaos in the world, then it would depend on whether they had the ability or not. With the high and mighty rule of the martial emperor, no one could turn over any waves. After that, the emperors also re-entered seclusion. They seemed to have a lot of things to do, so they did not come out. And the world returned to the original atmosphere. That was, many people began to transcend their tribulations one after another, wanting to use this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to prove their Tao and become an emperor. But just like before, everyone failed. Until in the divine court, the third aura of transcending the tribulations appeared, and a phantom of death appeared above the entire divine court. Yi Qianqian transcended the tribulations. And on the other side, almost at the same time as Yi Qianqian transcended the tribulations, Hua Menghan also transcended the tribulations at the same time. She turned into a fire phoenix, stunning the world, as if the phoenix ancestor who created the world had returned. Over the years, she finally improved her bloodline to the extreme, recreating the bloodline of the heavenly phoenix. The two of them transcended the tribulations at the same time, shocking the world. Most importantly, since ancient times, there was no example of a female emperor. At least in the historical records, there was no precedent of a woman becoming an emperor. All the emperors were men. And these two people might be able to break the shackles of so many years, and break the curse of so many years. Perhaps the cultivation of these two people might not be much more tyrannical than the other people who transcended the tribulations, but don't forget that Yi Shiwen was behind them. Yi Shiwen couldn't just watch these two people die in front of him, no matter what. This was their biggest advantage. And once they succeeded, the strength of the divine court would greatly increase, and the ancient phoenix world would also become active in the heavens again. Therefore, this heaven's tribulation soon attracted the attention of countless people, and even the 5 great emperors were alarmed. Emperor Mo, Demon Master, and Demon Monarch directly went to the two sides with their Dao tools, making it clear that they wanted to protect these two people. There were a total of 6 emperors in the world, and there were 4 standing behind them. Such a lineup could be described as incomparably luxurious. Since ancient times, probably only the heaven race could be so powerful and terrifying. This heaven's tribulation was also similar to the young Kuan Pung. Moreover, the heaven's tribulation that descended was also different according to the different cultivation methods they practiced. Both of them had famous masters, and they themselves practiced the strongest cultivation methods in the world. In addition, they had Yi Shiwen's guidance day and night, so they were much more tyrannical than others. Especially Hua Menghan. Similar to the young Kuan Pung, the figure of the phoenix ancestor appeared in her heaven's tribulation. She, as a descendant, naturally had to accept the phoenix ancestor's test if she wanted to break away from the influence of the phoenix ancestor. She had to walk on her own path in order to achieve the Tao. However, compared to the young Kuan Pung, Hua Menghan was much more prepared. She wasn't caught off guard, because she had already thought about it beforehand, and she would evolve in the heavens tribulation. And naturally, Yi Shiwen used the mysterious space to verify a brand new path for her. This was also the fundamental reason why the two women didn't transcend the heavens tribulation immediately, because they still needed to make more preparations. With this preparation in advance, coupled with the Tao tools, as well as the yellow plum and other heavenly treasures to replenish their recovery, both of them successfully evolved and walked on their own paths. All of a sudden, they created the unparalleled Empress path from ancient times to the present. Everyone was dumbfounded. Everyone knew that there was no Empress path from ancient times to the present, but as soon as one appeared, there were actually 2. Was this the compensation of the heaven and earth? Although compared to other emperors, their strength was still shallow, but with the backing of the divine court, they could quickly grow up and be on equal footing with other emperors. After Yi Qianqian became the Empress path, she rebuilt the underworld next to the divine court, gathered everyone in the underworld, and re-established the underworld. She was known as the Dead King. In the current world, there was no one like her, who had cultivated the Tao of death to such a terrifying level. In this aspect, even Yi Shiwen was inferior. After all, this was his strongest aspect. Hua Menghan returned to the ancient phoenix world. She became the phoenix ancestor in the ancient phoenix world. She became the second emperor in the ancient phoenix world after the phoenix ancestor. This was also the only existence among the 3 races that dominated the world back then that had successfully recovered its prestige. It also allowed the ancient Phoenix realm to stand out among the many sovereign emperor inheritances. The difference between a sovereign emperor's inheritance with or without a sovereign emperor was like the difference between heaven and earth. The ascension of the 2 empress emperors also stimulated some female experts to break through to the sovereign emperor realm. After that, Shennong's daughter, who was from the earthly sovereign Shennong's lineage in the fire cloud cave, tried to break through the heavenly tribulation. However, she failed in the end. She only managed to escape with her life. She used the supreme merit of the earthly sovereign to save her life. This was also the first time that someone could survive after failing to cross the heavenly tribulation. However, this didn't stop many people from advancing wave after wave. After that, over a dozen powerful seniors tried to break through to the imperial monarch realm, but all of them failed. 500 years later, the Ji clan announced that Ji Xianhuang was going to cross the heavenly tribulation. In the end, even Ji Xianhuang, who had inherited the Ji clan's orthodoxy, suffered a crushing defeat under the heavenly tribulation. In the end, he detonated the Qi of heaven and earth to protect himself. Only then did he escape the fate of being struck to death by the heavenly tribulation. At this time, everyone finally knew that Ji Xianhuang was actually the reincarnation of the first wisp of Qi of heaven and earth. No wonder he was so extraordinary, and even joined the Ji clan, but still failed in the end. Time passed as these peerless geniuses continuously tried to break through the heavenly tribulation. 1,000 years passed. Boom! An astonishing spatial fluctuation spread out from the divine court. Above the divine court, the great Tao lotus began to descend, and the chanting of the gods rang out incessantly. A world was formed. Chapter 3008. 1,000 years passed quickly. When everyone's attention was focused on the various heroes becoming emperors, Yi Shiwen's creation of heaven and earth was finally completed. He successfully opened up a martial emperor heaven in the divine court. When the martial emperor heaven was formed, the heaven and earth sent endless golden light of merit into the depths of the divine court. Apart from a portion of the golden light that scattered into the bodies of the people in the divine court, allowing them to break through together, most of the golden light was absorbed into the body of a big hand. Naturally, there was no one else but Yi Shiwen. Such a big movement was naturally not difficult to be discovered. Soon, everyone also understood that the martial emperor's creation of heaven and earth was finally completed. During this period, although the martial emperor was not around, no one dared to underestimate him. The incident of his spirit quelling the corpse calamity was still vivid in their minds. Even if it was just a spirit, the martial emperor was still the most terrifying existence in this world. The current Yi Shiwen was a bit like the Emperor Hunyuan in the past. An ordinary emperor-king wasn't at the same level as him in terms of using the power of the laws of heaven and earth. Therefore, he could kill the corpse king with a wisp of spirit. Of course, this was also related to the fact that the corpse king was not an emperor. No one thought of directly depriving him of his Tao fruit. However, this weakness of his was seen through by Yi Shiwen, so he was easily suppressed. Now, although Yi Shiwen was not the first emperor in the myriad heavens, the situation of him standing at the top and looking down on all the others had not changed. On the contrary, it had further widened the gap between them. When the martial emperor came out of closed-door cultivation, everyone immediately came to congratulate him. At this time, Yi Shiwen sent out a few invitations, inviting all the emperors to gather in the divine court. All the emperors knew that the matter that the martial emperor had mentioned more than 1,000 years ago was finally beginning. However, for this matter, no one resisted it. In fact, they were very supportive. Soon, all the emperors gathered outside the divine court. Suddenly, it became a grand event. The 8 emperors gathered in the divine court. Such a shocking scene would probably never be seen again. The arrival of the 8 emperors had caused the laws of the entire divine court to become very active. All the disciples of the divine court who had just felt merit enter their bodies had more or less achieved breakthroughs as a result. They had all benefited from it. Yi Shiwen cupped his hands in obeisance and said, "I'm very grateful that all of you are willing to come and help me. I don't want to waste your time. I'm going to explain that this array formation needs to stabilize the 8 most critical nodes in the world. I need all of you to help me complete this array formation. From now on, the heavens and the 10,000 worlds will no longer be spied on by foreign enemies. It's what we should do. Martial emperors, you don't have to be so polite. Ice Emperor, Emperor Yuan, and the others hurriedly said. Yi Shiwen sent the diagram of the entire array formation to the various sovereign emperors. With the comprehension and strength of the sovereign emperors, they naturally understood the diagram very quickly. Then, they dispersed according to the 8 nodes described on the diagram. According to Yi Shiwen's original plan, he had to complete it alone. He needed to arrange the nodes one by one. It was time-consuming and laborious. The difficulty could be imagined. The most important thing was that this array formation could be said to be the strongest array formation that Yi Shiwen had ever arranged. It was even more complicated than the heavenly cycle star array. Its power was not necessarily stronger than the heavenly cycle star array. It was only because the functions of the two were different. Moreover, this array formation was arranged with the heavens and the earth as a chessboard. The difficulty could be imagined. It was simply not at the same level. Every node had to be suppressed with the heavenly materials. Among the many emperors, probably only Yi Shiwen had the financial resources to complete it. Once it was completed, it would not be easy for the existences outside the 10,000 worlds to enter. Especially the existence of the primordial emperor, which made Yi Shiwen extremely afraid. Even with the help of several emperor lords, it still took more than 100 years to set up the formation before they finally succeeded. If Yi Shiwen was alone, it was unknown how long it would take for him to succeed. Since then, the 10,000 worlds had officially entered the era of multiple emperors. Among these glorious and dazzling emperors' inheritances, the divine court was still the most dazzling one. Originally, in the eyes of many people, although the emperors' inheritances were very powerful, in fact, there was not much use. Except for the Ji family, the emperor clan, there was no other family that could cultivate the existence of the emperor level. It seemed that whether a person could become an emperor or not, in the end, in fact, it was not very useful. Any emperor had to walk their own path if they wanted to appear. At this time, the experience of being born in the emperor's inheritances would become the real problem, locking them in and preventing them from breaking through. But after this, the original concerns no longer existed. Although becoming an emperor still depended on some luck, there were traces to follow. In the divine court, there were many emperors and Yi Shiwen. It could be said to be the world's #1 inheritance. Therefore, every time the divine court opened the mountain gate to recruit disciples, it would attract countless young talents to come forward to be apprentices. Therefore, the strength of the divine court naturally became the best in the world. After the 10,000 worlds were sealed, such days passed for thousands of years, and the 10,000 worlds truly began to prosper. On this day, the Demon King, Demon Master, and Phoenix Ancestor, who ruled the world, all received an invitation from Yi Shiwen. They rushed over in an extremely low-key manner. They knew very well that Yi Shiwen must have a special reason for calling them over with such great fanfare. When they gathered, they were like ordinary people. All the pressure on their bodies dissipated, just like countless years ago. "Come to think of it, it's been a while since we gathered together," Yi said. At the last gathering, they were still only quasi-emperors. At that time, they were already ranked among the strongest group of people below the sovereign emperor. But now, they seemed to have completed a metamorphosis. Not only were they the strongest in the world, but they had also successfully advanced to the sovereign emperor realm. They had attained the fruit of the way that very few people had been able to attain in countless years, becoming one of the strongest group of people in history. It's not as convenient as it used to be. There are too many trivial matters. Yi Wudi said. Little Koan Pung nodded. As the protectors and rulers of the ancient heavenly court, they had too many things to handle. They were not like Yi Shiwen, who had been emperors for a long time. Many of the things that needed to be prepared had already been prepared. They had long been separated from the ordinary mundane matters. All right, let's not talk about this. Why did you call us over? Hua Menghan said directly. Many years had passed, but her beauty did not diminish. As a rare empress in the world, it made her even more charming. Yi Qianqian nodded. They were different from Dawn. Although they were Yi Shiwen's wives, they were very independent. Each of them was the ruler of a territory, and they did not usually live in the divine court. Yi Qianqian lived in the underworld, while Hua Menghan lived alone in the south of the ancient Phoenix realm. I called all of you here today to tell you that I plan to go to the Fortune realm and find out what's going on, Yi Shiwen said to them. What? You want to go to the creation realm? Everyone turned pale with fright. Although everyone had already become emperors, Yi Shiwen's position in their hearts was irreplaceable. They seemed to have gotten used to Yi Shiwen over the years. With Yi Shiwen holding the line, no one had ever been able to make any waves. However, on a deeper level, everyone had already reached this step, so they naturally knew what the legendary Fortune realm was. Although they didn't know much about it, it was naturally different from ordinary people who had never heard of it. Since ancient times, there had never been any emperors who had truly left the myriad heavens for the creation realm who had returned. Although many of the emperors' legacies recorded rumors and legends of the creation realm, no emperors had ever returned. This meant that no one truly knew what the situation was like on the other side. The most typical example was Emperor Qin, who had become emperor. After he went to the creation realm, he never returned. Just like the other emperors who had gone there, it was as though they had all disappeared. Not a single message could be sent back. Some of the means left by the emperors to contact them could still be sensed even in the chaos. However, those emperors who had gone to the creation realm never appeared again. Imperceptibly, the creation realm had become a dangerous place in everyone's hearts. Although everyone wanted to know what exactly that creation was, they couldn't withstand the danger. How could they not be shocked after hearing Yi Shiwen's words? The reason why they had heard of the creation realm was mostly from Yi Shiwen. Naturally, they knew that Yi Shiwen would eventually go to the creation realm. However, they did not expect that time would come so soon. Martial Emperor, even if you want to go, you don't have to rush. Wait until your cultivation reaches the 7th realm. It will be much safer then. Yemo said after pondering for a moment. The 7th realm? Yi Shiwen said, I can't wait that long. In the myriad heavens, the progress of cultivation is too slow. I have a hunch that Emperor Primordial Chaos will not give up. I want to go to the creation realm to see if there are any opportunities. Yi Shiwen had already felt that his cultivation had slowed down again. Although compared to the average person, his speed of progress was already amazing. However, it was still not enough for him. He had a hunch that Emperor Primordial Chaos would not give up. The next time he appeared, it might be a thunderous blow. He would not sit still and wait for death. Moreover, he guessed that Emperor Primordial Chaos was most likely in the creation realm. Instead of passively defending, it was better to directly kill his way into the creation realm. When the time came, he would kill the danger in the creation realm. Of course, the most important thing was that he had actually felt an intense summoning from the boundless void in recent days. Chapter 3009. He had always been curious as to why all the senior emperor monarchs, regardless of the era, race, or cultivation level, couldn't help but go to the fortune world. Only a small number of them stayed. How many unknown secrets were there? It was just that the era of the emperor monarchs was too different. Moreover, the ancient records couldn't record many things about the emperor monarch. As a result, many things were left unsolved. Originally, he didn't have a strong desire to go to the fortune realm. He just felt that he would have to go there sooner or later. As for what the legendary fortune was, he wanted to find out. However, that was a matter for a long time in the future. Just as Yemo and the others were worried, Yi Shiwen was also worried that the fortune world was a dragon's pool and tiger's den, or there were other reasons. His strength was higher, so it would be safer for him to go to the fortune world. But now, time waited for no one. The progress of his cultivation had also slowed down. He could clearly feel the bottleneck. He had no use for the heavenly merit. Even if he used it, he would still face the same problem when he reached the fourth realm. After that, there were still the fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth realms. There were too many to count. How much time would he have to spend on them? No one knew whether he could make a breakthrough or not. Therefore, he must find a way to go to the fortune world and improve his strength as soon as possible to deal with the threat of Emperor Primordial Chaos. And recently, he actually felt a real calling, as if it was calling him to go somewhere. This was unprecedented. He had never felt such a feeling before. At this time, he finally understood why so many senior emperor monarchs went to the fortune world one after another. Perhaps there really was something there. The feeling of being summoned grew stronger day by day. That was why he was finally sure of this matter. Then, he gathered everyone. If there was anything in the heavens worth worrying about, it would be them. Have you decided? Yi Qianqian looked at him. Well, I've decided. I've never believed in fate or anything like that. But, perhaps, there's something that's calling me from the unseen world. Yi Shiwen said. He nodded in a very serious manner. Then let's go. Hua Menghan looked at Yi Shiwen and said. She originally wanted to say that she also wanted to go with Yi Shiwen, but she couldn't let go of everything in the heavens. Presumably, Yi Shiwen also knew this, so he didn't make such a request, and wouldn't make things difficult for them. Well, I've thought about it. I'll go first and explore the way. Anyway, according to my estimation, you'll most likely have to accept the summons after your cultivation has reached a certain level, Yi Shiwen said. Then, he told everyone about the feeling of being summoned. Everyone now understood the fundamental reason why Yi Shiwen wanted to go to the fortune world. However, if what Yi Shiwen said was true, then it was obvious that they would still have to accept the summons one day. So, it wasn't a separation. Sooner or later, they would meet again. However, the only thing that worried them was what kind of place the creation realm was. Why did the Thearchs never return after going there? Well, I'm just informing you, but it doesn't mean that I'll go immediately. I just need to be prepared. In the future, I'll have to trouble you with the matters of the heavens and the realms. Yi Shiwen looked at everyone and said. These were the most tyrannical Thearchs of the heavens and the realms. Their existence was also the foundation that determined the general trend of the heavens and the realms. As long as they were united, no matter how the situation changed in the future, Yi Shiwen wouldn't worry. Fortune realm, let me see what kind of existence you are. The other Thearchs left one after another. With their current cultivation, if they really wanted to communicate, they actually didn't need to meet each other. They could communicate through the air. It was just that this time, Yi Shiwen's solemn invitation made them come in person. This matter was very secretive. Even Ice Emperor and Emperor Yuan didn't notice it. Yi Shiwen cut off the mysteries of heaven, so even they didn't know. In any case, in Yi Shiwen's heart, only Yemo and the others were truly his people, and only they could be absolutely trusted. For the outside world, all these things didn't change at all. It was still the same. The Thearchs were in seclusion to consolidate their cultivation, and those peak quasi-emperors were trying to break through. In the heavenly realm, a world with many Thearchs, in the vast martial sect's encampment, a figure appeared at the entrance of the martial sect's mountain gate. A faintly discernible Tao might swept across the sky. The existence of this person actually alarmed the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace guarding the entrance of the martial sect. For a Tao tool of this level, it was the most sensitive to Tao might. The movement of the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace immediately alarmed the higher-ups of the martial sect. Soon, they understood why the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace was actually alarmed from its slumber. It turned out that the martial emperor came in person. After the martial emperor became an emperor, although he patrolled the heavens and the realms, he had never come to the martial sect again. Therefore, the higher-ups of the martial sect immediately welcomed the martial emperor in, but there was no fanfare. This was because Yi Shiwen didn't release the magical scene with him. There was no celestial phenomenon of the thearchs accompanying him. It was clear that he didn't want everyone to know. The higher-ups of the martial sect were a little puzzled. Why would the martial emperor come in person? This didn't seem to be normal. Yi Shiwen walked on the stone steps of the martial sect's mountain gate. Behind him were the higher-ups of the martial sect. No one dared to walk side by side with him. He could feel that the faint pressure on the stone steps was not from the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace. Instead, it was a purer and unfathomable pressure. It should have been left behind by the Qin Emperor who created the martial sect. It was not difficult for him to break through this Tao might. However, out of respect for the Qin Emperor, he didn't do so in the end. Soon, everyone arrived at the core of the martial sect's mountain gate, which was also where the main body of the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace was located. Apart from being mobilized to support Yi Shiwen, the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace had never been awakened from its slumber. Greetings, fellow Taoist. In the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace, a domineering figure appeared. He looked to be in his 20s and was dressed in a purple robe. He looked somewhat domineering. It was the spirit of the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace. Although the Qin Emperor was not the first owner of the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace, the spirit was no different from the Qin Emperor. Greetings, fellow Taoist. Yi Shiwen cupped his hands and said. It was not only out of respect for the Qin Emperor, but also because the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace had awakened in the past and helped him. He had always been a person who distinguished kindness and hatred clearly. After becoming an emperor, he was even more unrestrained and only followed his heart. May I know why fellow Taoist has come this time? The spirit of the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace said. Firstly, to thank fellow Taoists for your help many years ago, Yi Shiwen said. He was very grateful for this. He would never forget who had helped him in the past. It was nothing. Fellow Taoist has great luck. Even if I did not help, fellow Taoist would have been able to avoid danger. Fellow Taoist is too polite. The spirit of the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace said in a tone that was neither servile nor overbearing. Secondly, I want to look up some ancient books and ask about some matters regarding the Qin Emperor back then, Yi Shiwen said. The spirit of the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace suddenly became serious. Then, he waved his hand and created an independent space. Then, he said, May I know what fellow Taoist wants to ask? I just want to ask if the Qin Emperor went to the Fortune Realm? Yi Shiwen did not resist and let this independent space envelop him. The elders of the martial sect who followed behind him all disappeared without a trace. If it was someone else who asked, I naturally would not say. However, since it is fellow Taoist, there is no harm. The spirit of the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace was very appreciative of Yi Shiwen. His spirit originally had a part of the spirit of the Qin Emperor. His character was also similar to the Qin Emperor. He was very appreciative of Yi Shiwen's bold and courageous character. In addition, after Yi Shiwen became an emperor, he had pacified the calamities of the world several times. He was just like the Qin Emperor back then, which made him even more appreciative. The Qin Emperor did indeed go to the Fortune Realm. However, since fellow Taoist is asking this, could it be that fellow Taoist has also received that kind of summon? The spirit of the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace looked at Yi Shiwen with a little surprise and could not help but ask. Yes, I have indeed received a kind of summon. However, is there anything strange about it? Why is fellow Taoist so strange? Yi Shiwen also asked with some curiosity. With fellow Taoist's situation, it is not strange to receive a summon. However, it is so early that it is beyond my expectations. In my opinion, fellow Taoist should not have cultivated to the fourth realm, said the spirit of the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace. And that's right. Speaking of which, I am also ashamed that I am still a little short of the third realm, said Yi Shiwen. Fellow Taoist's cultivation speed is already rarely seen since ancient times. If even you are ashamed, then what about those emperors? The spirit of the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace said in a rare teasing tone. Since fellow Taoist has said so, I think fellow Taoist probably does not know much about the matters of the fortune realm. If you were to ask other spirit, even if they are also Tao tools, they may not know much. However, because I was born in the Ji family of the Emperor clan and followed the Qin Emperor to war, I know many things that others do not know. If fellow Taoist wants to know, we can slowly talk about it. Please follow me. The spirit of the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix Palace looked at Yi Shiwen and nodded. Then, it broke through the void and directly entered a space that was like a fairyland. Yi Shiwen immediately followed without the slightest hesitation. With his cultivation, there was no place in the heavens that he did not dare to go. Is this the place where fellow Taoist is sleeping? It is indeed a fairyland on earth. Chapter 30:10. Is this the place where you slumbered? It is indeed a paradise on earth. Yi Shiwen sized up this space. It was indeed a blessed land for cultivation. Even the tool spirit of a Tao tool needed to cultivate. Tao tools were also divided into different levels. The more powerful the tool spirit was, the more formidable the strength it could display. In addition to the Emperor himself, the spirit of the Tao tool was also the fundamental reason for how much strength the Tao tool could display. This is also the place where Emperor Qin cultivated. The spirit of the 100 birds palace said with a smile. I say no wonder, Yi Shiwen said with a smile. In this space, the only place that could be compared to the divine court was probably his own Wu heaven. If it was left behind by Emperor Qin, then it was very normal. Regarding Emperor Qin's strength, in Yi Shiwen's opinion, before Emperor Qin left, his strength was probably above Yi Shiwen's current strength. Did you just say that you also received that kind of summon? The spirit of the 100 birds palace sat cross-legged with Yi Shiwen, facing each other. Yes, but from what you said, it seems that not everyone can receive that kind of summon? Yi Shiwen asked. Of course, he was referring to those Emperor Qin. Yes, according to Emperor Qin's previous investigation, indeed not all Emperor Qin can receive that kind of summon. The spirit of the 100 birds palace nodded. Only a small number of Emperor Qin can receive this kind of summon and go to the fortune realm. What about the other Emperor Qin? Yi Shiwen asked. The other Emperor Qin also want to go to the fortune realm to find the fortune realm. The spirit of the 100 birds palace said. The reasons are all different. I see. Yi Shiwen nodded. He originally thought that all the Emperor Qin could receive such a strong summon. Yi Mo and the others had not received the summon because they had not reached that level of strength. Now it seemed that this was not the case. It should be that only a small number of Emperor Qin could receive the summon. Then, do you know what this summoning is? Yi Shiwen asked. What is this? I don't know either, but there is a saying that this is the summon of good fortune. The person who receives this summon will have the opportunity to truly wield good fortune in the future, said the artifact spirit of the 100 birds facing Phoenix Palace. Yi Shiwen was a bit puzzled when he heard this. Good fortune, everyone knew that it was good fortune, but what exactly was good fortune? Everyone says that it's good fortune, but do you know exactly what this so-called good fortune is? I'm sorry. Actually, I'm not sure either. The artifact spirit of the 100 birds facing Phoenix Palace couldn't help but smile apologetically. No one can say for sure what this good fortune is. Is it a divine material from the heavens? Or a magic tool? Or was it a position? Or was it some kind of inheritance? No one knows. The 100 birds paying Phoenix Palace's artifact spirit shook its head, indicating that it was also completely unaware. Perhaps only when you go to the good fortune world will you be able to find out. Since you have received the summon, it shouldn't be too far from the good fortune world. Yi Shiwen nodded, tacitly agreeing. Although he could suppress the temptation of the summon was getting stronger every day. There would always be a time when he couldn't resist it. Rather than resisting it here, it was better to go directly to the good fortune world. Maybe you will have the opportunity to meet Emperor Qin. The artifact spirit of the 100 birds facing Phoenix Palace couldn't help but smile. Speaking of the good fortune world, even he was somewhat looking forward to it. It was just that the martial sect couldn't do without a Dao tool to guard it, so he was left behind. In addition to these things, I came here this time because there is one more thing I want to ask you. Since Emperor Qin has gone to the good fortune world, may I ask if you know where the entrance to the good fortune world is? Asked Yi Shiwen. In this regard, Yi Shiwen and the others were too far away from becoming Emperor Qin compared to before. Therefore, he didn't know where the entrance to the good fortune world was. Therefore, he could only come to the martial sect to ask. After all, Emperor Qin was the most recent emperor to go to the good fortune world. There should be some information left in the sect. This is indeed not a problem. However, the entrance to the good fortune world has been broken many years ago. Therefore, if you want to enter, you must break the barrier of the crystal wall by yourself, said the artifact spirit of the 100 birds facing Phoenix Palace. Is it difficult to break it? Asked Yi Shiwen. There is indeed a little. With your strength, you may be able to try. Apart from you, there should be no one else in the heavens who has the ability to break the crystal wall by force, explained the artifact spirit of the 100 birds facing Phoenix Palace. Thank you for telling me this, but before I leave, I don't know if I can have a discussion with you. I also want to see the glory of Emperor Qin from countless years ago, said Yi Shiwen. For an emperor, in addition to hard cultivation, sitting down and discussing with an expert of the same level was also a very fast progress in cultivation. Although the 100 birds facing Phoenix Palace was only an artifact spirit, it was the artifact spirit of Emperor Qin. It was enough to be on an equal footing with Yi Shiwen. That is naturally the best. The artifact spirit of the 100 birds facing Phoenix Palace was very happy and nodded. Because this matter was beneficial to both sides, there was no reason to refuse. While Yi Shiwen and the artifact spirit of the 100 birds facing Phoenix Palace sat down and discussed in the independent space, the elders of the martial sect outside also looked at each other because they didn't know why Yi Shiwen came. Although Yi Shiwen and the martial sect had always been in contact and their relationship was extremely deep, Yi Shiwen's status was after all different now. If there was anything, it was usually them who went to see him instead of Yi Shiwen coming in person. However, they could only look at each other and didn't dare to discuss casually. Even if they were separated by layers of space, this discussion would be immediately heard by Yi Shiwen. The emperor was a great existence that existed with the world. As long as their name was mentioned, it would definitely enter their ears. Under the full suppression of the higher-ups of the martial sect, the news that a martial emperor had once visited was not known to outsiders. Outsiders also didn't expect Yi Shiwen to personally visit the martial sect. After Yi Shiwen left the martial sect, he didn't immediately leave the heaven realm. On the contrary, he began to walk in the heaven realm. With his cultivation, there was nothing in the world that could hide from him. Almost everywhere his eyes passed, everything fell into his eyes, including the heavens, the earth, the underworld, and everything fell into his eyes. After Yi Shiwen left the martial sect, his first stop was to go to the Emperor clan, Ji family. He was warmly welcomed by the Emperor clan, Ji family. Previously, Yi Shiwen's rescue of the Tai sovereign sword was also a huge favor to the Emperor clan, Ji family. Then, Yi Shiwen proposed that he wanted to read the ancient books of the Ji family. Then, the matter of him rescuing the Tai sovereign sword would be written off. No one owed each other anything. The Ji family considered for a long time, and finally agreed to Yi Shiwen's request, allowing him to comprehend the various ancient books in the Ji family. Although they weren't martial arts secret books, they were just some martial arts comprehension left behind by the predecessors. However, compared to ordinary forces, it was boundlessly rich. After all, the Emperor clan, Ji family had produced 6 emperors. Therefore, the main bloodline of the Ji family was also divided into 6. Only an ancestor who had a emperor level expert could become the main bloodline. Previously, Ji Xianhuang was a direct descendant of the genuine human emperor Xianyuan. Therefore, he was able to be praised. At a young age, he had already cultivated to the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. Unfortunately, he also failed to cross the tribulation. In the Ji family's ancient books pavilion, Yi Shiwen sat for more than 100 years. Even with his cultivation and reading speed, it still took him more than 100 years to finish reading the vast ancient books. After reading it, even with Yi Shiwen's experience, he was still amazed. The Emperor clan, the Ji clan, was worthy of being the strongest Emperor clan's inheritance in the world today. Although there was no Emperor clan in charge now, in terms of heritage, no one could compare. Any one of the 6 god monarchs of the Ji family could be said to be an invincible existence. Each of them had their own completely different Tao. It could be said that their Tao was all-encompassing. All kinds of martial arts and skills in the world could be found in the Ji family. Therefore, the disciples of the Ji family usually had extraordinary cultivation. God kings and quasi-emperors were also a common sight. Although there were no specific cultivation methods, and only some records of views, for Yi Shiwen, it was already a rare treasure. This was a huge wealth that couldn't be exchanged with money. This was also the first time that the Ji family accepted an outsider into the pavilion. If it wasn't because Yi Shiwen had rescued the Tai sovereign sword before and made the Ji family owe him a huge favor, it would have been absolutely impossible. After reading all these ancient books, Yi Shiwen only felt that his understanding of martial arts had also improved at a lightning speed. For him, the most important thing now was to improve his understanding of martial arts. After reading the ancient books, Yi Shiwen didn't leave immediately. Instead, he started to close up and directly made a breakthrough in the pavilion. This almost scared the experts of the Ji family who had been paying attention to it. A martial emperor was actually going to make a breakthrough in their Ji family? What would happen if there was a mistake? Therefore, the Ji family hurriedly put all kinds of defensive formations on Yi Shiwen. Although they knew that no one in the myriad heavens would dare to disturb Yi Shiwen, and even if they did, they wouldn't be his opponent, they still didn't dare to take it lightly. In the close-up, 100 years passed in the blink of an eye. In these 100 years, countless Tao manifested around Yi Shiwen. From time to time, the mysterious yellow qi of merit would appear around his body and shroud him. Yi Shiwen's cultivation had also soared to the sky from the beginning. Later, it became as calm as an ordinary person. After a long time, Yi Shiwen finally opened his eyes. He stretched his waist, yawned and said, "It's really 100 years of sleep. I know the Tao." Only he himself knew that in these 100 years of Tao enlightenment, he had completely stepped into the peak of the 3rd realm. He only needed a breakthrough to enter the 4th realm. The harvest was huge. Chapter 30:11. Congratulations to the martial emperor. May you live a long life. The scene of Yi Shiwen's breakthrough shocked everyone in the Ji clan. Many elders of the Ji clan came to greet him and congratulate him. Yi Shiwen got up and looked at the nervous elders with a faint smile. I'm very satisfied with the hospitality this time. I'll take my leave now. This was a fair deal. The Ji clan used many ancient books to erase Yi Shiwen's previous kindness of saving the Tai sovereign sword. Suddenly, a shocking sword light swept across the sky. Yi Shiwen caught it and saw that it was the Tai sovereign sword. The Tai sovereign sword flew out of the sword pavilion and stopped in front of Yi Shiwen. It trembled slightly and made a sound, as if expressing its gratitude to Yi Shiwen, but also as if it was reluctant to leave. In Yi Shiwen's hands, it had recovered to its peak in just a short time. In today's world, besides Yi Shiwen, who else could truly display its combat power? Well, I'm relieved to see that you're doing well, Yi Shiwen said to the Tai sovereign's sword with a smile. Before his voice died away, he had already disappeared from the Ji clan. May the martial emperor live a long life. The elders of the Ji clan looked at each other, but they did not dare to stop talking. After leaving the Ji clan, Yi Shiwen walked around the ancestral land of the human clan. It seemed that he wanted to explore the entire ancestral land before he left. Yi Shiwen's cultivation had reached such a level that he could see far into the distance. Only then did he realize that there were many hidden dragons and crouching tigers in the ancestors' land. He had been able to escape unscathed at that time because he was very lucky. He came to the sway wood in the center of the ancestral land. This sway tree was the same as when he left it. The candlelight illuminated tens of thousands of miles, illuminating the surrounding hundreds of thousands of miles as if it was daytime. Countless fire attribute laws were active here. If one wanted to cultivate fire attribute martial arts, this was almost the best place, like a holy land. However, just as Yi Shiwen was about to leave, he suddenly sensed an extremely tyrannical aura in the sway wood, which was faintly discernible. He was instantly curious and couldn't help but say, "Fellow cultivator, please come out and meet me." As soon as he finished speaking, a ray of light flew out from the sway wood. It was an ordinary-looking middle-aged man who was wearing beast skin. He seemed to be an extremely ancient existence. "Could it be that your fellow Taoist Swerin?" Yi Shiwen asked. He was also slightly shocked in his heart. If this was the case, then the age and seniority of this old man was really frightening. The body of this middle-aged man was flickering with an extremely rich power of virtue. It could even isolate Yi Shiwen's vision, making it impossible for Yi Shiwen to see clearly. Otherwise, with Yi Shiwen's cultivation, he would be able to see through everything with just a glance. Nothing could hide from him. "You must be fellow Yi who has just become an emperor, right? Greetings." The man cupped his hands and said to Yi Shiwen, "Although I have some relationship with Swirenshi, I am not Swirenshi. Because I am a wisp of Swirenshi's benevolence." The middle-aged man said, "This is impossible unless—" Yi Shiwen frowned. His immediate reaction was disbelief. Impossible? With his cultivation, if it was just a wisp of benevolence and evil thoughts, he could almost see through it at a glance. How could he not see through it? Moreover, this middle-aged man's aura was extremely powerful. It seemed that it was almost no less than an emperor. In terms of strength, it was extremely rare. How could such an existence be a wisp of benevolence? However, Yi Shiwen immediately reacted when the words were on the tip of his tongue. This was impossible unless this wisp of kindness had received the power of faith from countless people, and had made countless contributions. Then, it had formed a Tao body with the power of faith. Only then Yi Shiwen couldn't see through it. Only then could it possess such tyrannical strength. Because Swirenshi was one of the ancestors of humanity, there were many people who worshipped Swirenshi's wooden statue every day, let alone this Swerin wood. Rumor had it that Swirenshi was next to this Swerin wood and obtained the tinder for mankind, creating a new era for mankind. Therefore, this swearing wood had a completely different meaning among mankind. Naturally, there would be countless people worshipping it. It was not surprising that it could absorb the power of faith. When Swarenshi was not around, these power of faith fell into this wisp of divine thought and finally formed such a supreme existence. Because this was the expectation and faith of all mankind for Swarenshi. Therefore, it could be said that the middle-aged man in front of Yi Shiwen was indeed Swarenshi, and he also achieved invincibility with this endless power of faith. Yes, in fact, this is the case. What you guessed is very accurate. Swarenshi's benevolence said indifferently. Obviously, he was extremely indifferent to all this. If I remember correctly, the last time fellow Taoist came here, you were still far from it. Only a short period of time has passed, and fellow Taoist has already cultivated to such an extent. I'm afraid you are truly one of the few geniuses and experts in the world. Swarenshi also looked at Yi Shiwen with some surprise. He still vaguely remembered what happened to Yi Shiwen last time, but he did not expect that after so many years, Yi Shiwen actually became a supreme emperor, and one day he could stand in front of him and be on an equal footing with him. You are flattering me, Yi Shiwen said. I have a whole new level of respect for you. It's just a strand of kindness attached to the sway wood, but it can actually become so powerful. It's obvious that you have a high reputation in the human race. Now this wisp of benevolence of Swarenshi was almost approaching the realm of emperor. It could be seen how rich the power of faith added to him was. Otherwise, a wisp of benevolence could not really become so powerful today. In addition to Emperor Qin countless years ago, you are the second emperor to come here. Although I achieved Tao because of the power of faith, I can't leave the ancestral land because of this. Although I seem to have sensed many emperors becoming emperors before, I can't go out to confirm, Swarenshi said. Because he was a wisp of benevolence, even if he was detained like this for life, he would not have any resentment. Yi Shiwen nodded. It was also because of the existence of Swarenshi that the ancestral land of mankind had not fallen for countless years, and it became the true ancestral land of mankind. Yi Shiwen did not stay for a long time. After talking with Swarenshi for half a day, he left the Swearin Wood. In the following days, Yi Shiwen visited many important places in the myriad heavens realms. Before leaving, he must consider all possible unstable situations in the myriad heavens realms. Especially the inheritances of many emperors, Yi Shiwen had to visit them one after another. Many emperors had their own unique Tao, which was also what Yi Shiwen wanted to learn. As Yi Shiwen visited more and more emperors' inheritances, this news gradually spread out. Everyone gradually realized something, but they didn't know what it was. However, some people speculated whether Yi Shiwen was going to leave the heavens like other emperors. It was because there were too many such cases, almost innumerable. However, they did not dare to speculate about such things. With Yi Shiwen's current status, it was nothing for him to read some ancient book. Moreover, it was not a secret book of martial arts. At most, it was some cultivation experience and so on. Many of them could not understand it themselves. They were recorded on some mountain rocks and left cultivation imprint. The imprints of emperors' level were not something that they, the quasi-emperors, could understand at all. Only Yi Shiwen could understand it. These were useless to keep them. On the contrary, after Yi Shiwen read them, in addition to those sects that owed him favors, he would also give pointers to the outstanding juniors of the emperor's inheritances, or simply sort out some insights that they could not understand and leave them behind. This also made many emperors' inheritances hope that Yi Shiwen could come. With Yi Shiwen's current status and strength realm, he naturally had the demeanor of a grandmaster. These things were just a piece of cake for him. Moreover, this was almost a tacit, unspoken rule among the emperors. If one easily exterminated the whole sect and cut off the inheritance just because one became an emperor, then in the future, someone would inevitably exterminate one's sect. As the saying goes, no flower blossoms for 100 days, and no man is happy for 1,000 days. As Yi Shiwen read more and more ancient books, Yi Shiwen couldn't help but sigh. Many emperors are really rare geniuses. The Tao that each of them created is dazzling and unimaginable. Yi Shiwen didn't feel ashamed of his inferiority. After all, he had already cultivated to this stage. Who could be inferior to anyone? There was no difference in the Tao of each clan. The Tao that could be cultivated to the emperor level was extremely broad and could lead to the endless great Tao. It was just that there was a difference in personal understanding, which led to the difference in strength. To Yi Shiwen, these great path imprints of the other emperors were simply the best of the best. They increased his knowledge and broadened his horizons on top of his already extensive knowledge of the 3,000 martial paths. He integrated them directly into the 3,000 martial paths. Originally, Yi Shiwen's 3,000 martial paths were the strongest of the top 10 martial paths. They were also Yi Shiwen's strongest martial inheritance. But now it was no longer the top 10 but the top 100. This was a breakthrough made after observing the martial imprints of the other emperor's Tao. It was not as simple as the improvement of the martial arts that he had mastered. This represented that Yi Shiwen's martial Tao had also become broader. Yi Shiwen's 3,000 martial Tao was like a bridge that led directly to the Tao. The more exquisite and powerful the 3,000 martial Tao was, the broader his future path would be. After breaking through to the third realm with the forgetting life and death technique, Yi Shiwen found another way to break through to the fourth realm. Chapter 30:12. At this stage of cultivation, there was really no road ahead. In the past, although he had to fumble around on his own in every realm of cultivation, it could be said that there were plenty of precedents for him to learn from. His predecessors had already opened up a path to the heavens for him. However, it was completely different now. He had to open up every step by himself. In other words, the road ahead had been cut off, and he needed to continue with his own path. Therefore, Yi Shiwen's current cultivation was different from the past. Not only did he need to cultivate, but he also needed to comprehend and continue on his own path. Learning from others' path was also extremely beneficial for his cultivation. Yi Shiwen patrolled along the way, visiting the inheritances of many emperor lords along the way, and stopped from time to comprehend. In the blink of an eye, another 1,000 years had passed. Yi Shiwen had discovered several dangerous places in the past thousands of years. He didn't know which emperor had suppressed and sealed these terrifying existences. However, these existences had shown signs of breaking out of the seal after countless years of corrosion. They had shown signs of breaking out of the seal. Although they weren't emperors, but they could still cause headaches to the ancient emperors. They couldn't kill them directly. One could well imagine how troublesome these terrifying existences were. Yi Shiwen spent a considerable amount of time reinforcing these seals. There were even some terrifying existences that he didn't know how they were formed. Even Yi Shiwen was frightened when he saw them. Their combat power was estimated to be comparable to the fifth realm, or even the sixth realm Emperor Lord. Such an existence was extremely tricky to deal with. Even Yi Shiwen couldn't see through it. How did it come into being? It was unknown how many such existences had existed in the long river of history. However, they had been suppressed by the current emperor. Fortunately, he only reinforced the seals. However, this time, the reinforcement of the seals would at least make these monsters want to break out of the seal for at least tens of millions of years. Yi Shiwen couldn't care less about what would happen after tens of millions of years. After patrolling the universe, Yi Shiwen returned to the divine court. While accompanying his family and friends, he also comprehended and searched for ways and paths to break through to the fourth realm. The difficulty was many times more difficult than his previous breakthroughs. Yi Shiwen's family knew that Yi Shiwen was about to enter the fortune world to fight that unknown existence. Therefore, during this period of time, they would try their best to accompany Yi Shiwen. They had to spend this last period of time well. With the passage of time, the news that Yi Shiwen was about to leave the myriad heavens world also spread out. Yi Shiwen didn't block this news because it wasn't necessary. Once he left, such a big movement would still be known. For a time, the entire universe fell into a panic. It seemed that everyone had become accustomed to Yi Shiwen's high and mighty rule over the past tens of thousands of years. They were accustomed to Yi Shiwen cutting through thorns and thorns for them, cutting off all uneasiness and injustice. Now that Yi Shiwen was going to leave, how could everyone not be frightened? Even those with great ambitions had to admit that the myriad heavens was as stable as Mount Tai with Yi Shiwen around. Although there were other emperor lords in power apart from Yi Shiwen, no one else could convince the masses. Especially their achievements were not enough to convince the masses that these emperor lords could really suppress all disobedience and bring peace to the myriad heavens. However, no one dared to persuade Yi Shiwen not to leave. In today's world, there was no such existence. After this rumor had been circulating for thousands of years, Yi Shiwen didn't deny it, nor did he admit it. In fact, he didn't even take many actions. Many people only thought that it was just a joke. Yi Shiwen set out. The Emperor Lord set out. The sky was full of rays of light, and the rain of light was dancing. It was a scene of a fairyland. The martial emperor is finally taking action. Everyone realized this and hurriedly rushed over from all over the world. This might be the last time the martial emperor would set out on a journey. So, they all rushed over to see Yi Shiwen off. There might not be a next time, because, at least since ancient times, they had never heard of anyone who could return from the so-called fortune realm. There were too many powerful emperor lords since ancient times. The Emperor Qin, who had unrivaled achievements in the past, the heaven, earth, and human sovereigns who swept away the chaos and brought peace to the world, the 5 emperors who put the human race on the throne of the 3 great races in the myriad heavens, the Demon Emperor, and the Demon Master who ruled the myriad heavens and ruled the myriad heavens. Several great demon kings of the devil race descended one after another. However, none of these people were able to escape this rule. No one could return from the fortune realm. No one knew what kind of place it was. Some people said it was a fairyland, while others said it was a land of death. It was the graveyard of the Emperor Lords. Since ancient times, only the Emperor Lords could go there. It was naturally the graveyard of the Emperor Lords. Following Yi Shiwen's movements, the other Emperor Lords also appeared one after another and followed behind Yi Shiwen. They went directly to the node of the myriad heavens and the fortune realm. "Martial Emperor, let me go with you," Yimo said. "There's no need. I'll go alone. If it's a safe place, then it's fine for me to go alone. However, if it's really a land of death like the legends say, then why are you in such a hurry to die?" Yi Shiwen said with a smile. "Moreover, the divine court also needs someone to look after it. I will entrust it to you." Yimo was silent for a moment, and finally reluctantly agreed. In fact, when Yi Shiwen said he wanted to go to the fortune realm, whether it was Yimo, Yi Qianqian, Hua Menghan, Yi Wudi, or little Kuan Peng, they all proposed to go together. However, Yi Shiwen rejected them all. Because he didn't know what kind of place the fortune realm was, he couldn't take the risk. As time passed, more and more people followed behind Yi Shiwen. They were the leaders of the various forces, the elders, and the like. Usually they were powerful and influential. However, at this time, they followed behind Yi Shiwen like sincere believers. Could be seen that Yi Shiwen was really popular over the years. Yi Shiwen looked behind him and saw familiar faces. He saw Lucifer in the demon clan's camp. In the past, they had a verbal agreement. If he could become an emperor, they would enter the fortune realm together. But now everything was different. Lucifer had not yet crossed the tribulation and became an emperor, but he had already received the summons. He had to take a step ahead. After remembering everyone's faces, Yi Shiwen turned around and released the aura of his whole body. Boom! A terrifying aura soared into the sky, and a powerful force was awakened around Yi Shiwen. For the first time, everyone truly felt Yi Shiwen's full strength. It was simply tyrannical, far beyond everyone's imagination. And the sky also seemed to feel this terrifying aura raging. Countless laws formed iron chains. These iron chains were dragged in the sky, making rattling sounds as if something was being dragged by these iron chains. Everyone knew that this moment was coming. The gate to the fortune realm was about to open. Even those who were not qualified to go stretched their necks, wanting to see what the so-called fortune realm was all about. A heavy and unimaginable aura suffocated everyone. All the creatures in the universe were trembling, and all kinds of fierce beasts and birds were crawling on the ground and wailing. It seemed that such a thing had happened in the distant past. Yi Shiwen opened his eyes. As the aura released from his body became heavier and heavier, the speed at which the iron chains were being dragged became faster and faster. One end stretched out from the depths of the universe, and the other end sank into the depths of the universe on the other side. There was no head or tail. At this time, above the sky, countless spiritual energies were surging, as if forming spiritual dragons. Countless spiritual energies burst forth, as if they had all appeared in an instant, turning into dragon veins. A total of 99,999 dragon veins were all awakened, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws, scrambling to escape. And on their necks, an iron chain had sunk into their bodies. As they scrambled to escape, they were also dragging something, as if they were about to appear from the other side of the universe. Suddenly, in the depths of the universe, a crack directly tore open, spitting out dazzling light. This light tore through everything, illuminating the entire universe, and a large amount of light rained scattered from it. Yi Shiwen pursed his lips. He knew that the gate to the fortune realm was about to open. It's really here. What a huge commotion. What kind of existence is this fortune realm? The Ice Emperor's eyes widened, and there was a bit of fear in his eyes. He couldn't imagine what kind of existence the fortune realm was, to have such great power. Those 99,999 dragon veins, this was a huge amount that even an emperor couldn't produce. He was about to faint. Finally, everyone could see the silhouette behind the endless rain of light. It was a door, a terrifying giant door. This door was hundreds of thousands of miles tall, and it seemed to rush from one end of the universe to the other. Those dragon veins that had transformed into true dragons were pulling this gate out from the endless sky. Everyone realized that an extraordinary existence had really been pulled out. This was indeed the node to the fortune realm. Yi Shiwen wasn't surprised. The light rain shone on his face, making him look incomparably cold. He had talked with the artifact spirit of the Phoenix Palace, and he also knew that as long as an emperor was summoned here and released a powerful aura, it could be drawn out. This gate's name was the Gate of Fortune. There was a saying that through the Gate of Fortune, one could go straight to the fortune realm. If it wasn't a summoned emperor, one would need to use a powerful force to force the Gate of Fortune out to have a chance to go to the fortune realm. However, when he looked at the Gate of Fortune, he was still shocked by the majesty of the Gate of Fortune. He didn't dare to imagine that his mind would be attracted by the Gate of Fortune, and he almost fell into it. This Gate of Fortune was definitely not as simple as a gate. It was definitely an extraordinary existence, and at this moment Yi Shiwen instantly attacked. Chapter 30:13. The Endless Divine Dynasty, which was shrouded in the brilliance of the Good Fortune Gate, led to endless good fortune step by step. In an instant Yi Shiwen's body shone brightly. Then, he punched out like a huge dragon, and went straight into the Gate of Good Fortune. Rumble! There was a loud rumbling sound, and this attack fell into the gate of good fortune. The gate of good fortune was like a ripple on the surface of the water, and it swallowed all of Yi Shiwen's attacks. "Sword, come!" Yi Shiwen shouted, and a sword light lit up in his hand. Then, an extremely terrifying sword light burst out, and went straight into the gate of good fortune. However, this attack was still not enough to make the gate of good fortune fluctuate. It was like the gate of good fortune was testing the person who wanted to pass through the gate of good fortune. If one didn't reach a certain level, one wouldn't be able to pass through. Yi Shiwen shouted and took a step forward. It was just a simple charge, but it almost shattered the mountains and rivers, and the entire universe shook under Yi Shiwen's charge. Even the entire gate of good fortune began to rumble faintly. Bang! 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 Yi Shiwen's strikes were getting heavier and more terrifying. He was the strongest emperor of the present age. He was an invincible martial emperor. Creak! There was a creaking sound that made one's teeth ache. Then, a gap began to appear on the majestic gate of good fortune, which was like a heavenly pillar. It seemed as if Yi Shiwen had opened it. He had really opened it alive. "It's just the beginning," Yi Shiwen said softly, and then launched all kinds of attacks. His strength was much lower than Emperor Qin's back then, so it was much more difficult for him to open the gate of good fortune. Emperor Qin almost used his own strength to quickly penetrate the gate of good fortune, and directly rushed in. After all, the time that Yi Shiwen had spent to become an emperor was too short. If he was given tens of thousands of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years, everything would be completely different. However, he had already come this far, and there was no reason to retreat. Boom! 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 The sound of the martial emperors bombarding the gate of good fortune had never stopped. It sounded like a clap of thunder. Such intensive bombardment did not stop for even a moment. Every attack was a terrifying attack that could pierce through a world and sink it. Even a sovereign emperor would need some time to prepare for such an astonishing attack. However, Yi Shiwen was able to attack continuously without any change in his expression. This also showed everyone the astonishing gap between Yi Shiwen and an ordinary sovereign emperor. 3 days. This kind of attack continued for 3 days before they finally managed to blast open a sufficiently large crack in the gate of fortune. Countless immortal lights seeped out from this crack. It was as though there really was an immortal realm on the other side. Countless fluctuations were fierce and intense, immortal light surging. Yi Shiwen understood that it was time to march into the fortune world. He turned around to take a look, and countless concerned faces appeared in his mind. Immediately after, he stepped on a streak of golden light and flew into the gate of fortune. Boom! Without the support of Yi Shiwen's power, the gate of fortune slowly closed. Everyone could only see the surging immortal mist and the scene of light rain filling the sky. However, Yi Shiwen could no longer be seen. Many people began to cry bitterly at this moment. They were originally holding back, not wanting to become Yi Shiwen's burden, so they did not make a sound. However, now that Yi Shiwen had left, they finally could not help but cry bitterly. Little Yu Ye did not know why her mother was sad. She only used her little hands to carefully wipe away the tears on her mother's face. Then, inexplicably, as though she was infected, she also began to cry bitterly. Soon, the cries converged into one. The universe was mourning, and the heaven and earth were crying bitterly. An invincible sovereign emperor had left. Fortune. These 2 words hung high up in the sky. Yi Shiwen saw these 2 words as soon as he entered the gate of fortune. It was different from what he had imagined. It was not the so-called fortune world after crossing the gate of fortune. However, these 2 words shocked him greatly. They were like Tao characters, but they were of a higher level than Tao characters. Even he could not see through all the mysteries within. He could only see that this was almost the embodiment of the great Tao, and it was all-encompassing. Fortune. What was fortune? Fortune was everything. Everything was fortune. Everything in the world was fortune. Yi Shiwen walked towards the depths of the path filled with immortal mist. He could truly feel that this path was extraordinary. It could almost be said that every step he took consumed a huge amount of magic power. It was truly a path that could not be passed by those who were not sovereign emperors. If one was not a sovereign emperor, one step would probably exhaust the magic power within one's body. However, what was even more terrifying was that Yi Shiwen discovered that his path had been sealed. The speed at which his magic power recovered was very slow. Compared to usual, it was more than 100 times slower. Is this the world inside the Gate of Fortune? Yi Shiwen felt a little uneasy. This path did not look like a good place no matter how he looked at it. Gradually, the scene of the surging immortal mist dissipated. Yi Shiwen could clearly see that it was a sparkling and translucent mountain road. This mountain was composed of an unknown crystal. It was sparkling and translucent, and was refracting a terrifying power. Yi Shiwen tried it. With his own power, he could only leave a few traces on this crystal-clear mountain. When he walked to the other end, he discovered that there were traces of fighting everywhere on this mountain path. Even though countless years had passed, these traces did not show any signs of fading away. On the contrary, there was an everlasting power that seemed to be the enemy of time. A battle between sovereign emperors! Yi Shiwen could not help but become solemn. Why would there be a battle between sovereign emperors on this path? What made him feel even more terrified was that these traces were obviously left behind by extremely tyrannical sovereign emperors. Even he could not leave such terrifying traces. Moreover, there was not just one such battlefield. There were quite a lot of traces. Without exception, these traces were left behind by sovereign emperors. What made Yi Shiwen's expression even more solemn was that these traces were not left behind by the same person. Yi Shiwen had already encountered no less than 10 battlefields, and he could sense dozens of completely different traces of the Great Tao. The strangeness of this mountain path had even exceeded Yi Shiwen's initial expectations. He had imagined what the fortune world would be like, but he had never imagined that it would be like this. This path had practically turned into one battlefield after another. As he went deeper and deeper, he could gradually see the existence of some wreckage. There were even some bone fragments, bloodstains, and the like. There were even some fragments of Tao tools that had fallen to the side. What kind of terrifying battle happened here? Why are there so many sovereign emperors fighting here? Boom! Yi Shiwen's voice had yet to fade, and he had yet to unravel the mystery in his heart. Suddenly, 2 figures appeared in front of him. 2 vast auras spread, and 2 figures appeared in front of Yi Shiwen. One of them was as red as blood, and his body was actually like a lizard. His entire body was densely covered with red scales, and his tail was like a wolf's tail. A fierce aura assaulted Yi Shiwen's senses. It had completely surpassed Yi Shiwen's understanding. Opposite him was a middle-aged man. He was surrounded by countless rare beasts, and every single one of his movements possessed an invincible might. Crimson Blood Emperor, do you really want to fight me here? The middle-aged man said with a slight frown. A resounding roar responded to him. He could not tell what it was, but he could feel a fierce aura assaulting him. It gave him a creepy feeling. Myriad Beast Emperor, the grudge between us should be settled here. There is no fortune at the end of the road of fortune. Do you still believe in that ridiculous legend? Ha ha ha. Finally, the Crimson Monster, the Crimson Blood Emperor, spoke. I have already reached the end of the road of fortune. How can I be willing to give up? If you stop me today, there will be a battle between you and me. The middle-aged man, the Myriad Beast Emperor, said, I, the Myriad Beast Emperor, have taken in countless rare birds and strange beasts in my life. But I have never taken in a monster like you. I have fulfilled my long-cherished wish. Well, it's time for a battle. Anyway, I can't go back, and my path of retreat has been cut off. A malevolent expression appeared on the crimson blood overlord's face. He opened his bloody mouth, and countless blood-colored laws appeared on his body. It was as if a rain of blood was falling from the sky, causing him to become even redder. The figures formed by the two terrifying auras did not continue to fight. Instead, they slowly dissipated. It turned out that the marks that had been engraved in the void had been activated after Yi Shiwen's arrival. Crimson Blood Emperor, Myriad Beast Emperor? Why have I never heard of these two emperors? Yi Shiwen frowned slightly. It must be known that he had read a lot of books now. There was almost no emperor that he didn't know unless it was the more distant mythological era. The language that they spoke was completely different from that of the myriad heavens and the 10,000 realms. They all spoke the Tao language. However, this was nothing for Yi Shiwen. He could immediately understand it because he understood these languages from the perspective of the great Tao. He didn't just memorize it. So, it was naturally extremely easy for him. Obviously, these two supreme existences had once fought here. It was a fight between emperors. So, even though countless years had passed, the traces of the great Tao still existed. Yi Shiwen's emperor level qi and blood had directly revived them. This allowed Yi Shiwen to see a part of what had happened on that day. Obviously, these two people should have been invincible existences in the past. Is this road called the Road of Fortune? Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes. If this was the case, then where was the end of this road? Could it be the myriad heavens and the 10,000 realms? However, Yi Shiwen immediately ruled out this possibility. There must be some other end. Moreover, it was possible that there was an existence that Yi Shiwen was completely unaware of. Yi Shiwen decided to continue moving forward. However, he saw that there were more and more wreckage. This continued until he saw the existence of a skeleton. Even though countless years had passed, the skeleton was still emitting a golden light. It hadn't faded away since ancient times. Moreover, the aura that this skeleton was emitting was somewhat familiar to Yi Shiwen. Suddenly, he opened his eyes. He knew who this skeleton belonged to. Chapter 30:14. The Heaven Lord. Yi Shiwen instantly figured out who this person was because it wasn't difficult to guess. Lucifer had once mentioned that in the past, there had also been an Emperor Lord among the angels. The Lord of Heaven had also stepped onto the path to the Fortune realm after many Emperor Lord. However, he was ambushed on the way to Fortune and died tragically. The other party even chased him all the way to the Heaven Lord, forcing Lucifer to fall into the demon realm to seek refuge. The aura exuded from this person was the same as Lucifer's, but it was much more tyrannical and profound than Lucifer's. If he wasn't mistaken, then it should be the Heavenly Lord. However, what really made Yi Shiwen gasp was the fact that the Heavenly Lord's cultivation was far superior to Yi Shiwen's from the skeleton he had left behind. Perhaps his cultivation was above the 6th realm. Even so, he had suffered misfortune and died a tragic death here. However, what puzzled Yi Shiwen was that the body of an Emperor Lord was already immortal. How could there be only bones left? Moreover, there was nothing left. It was as if they had been eaten clean. As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, Yi Shiwen immediately felt his hair stand on end. This path of fortune was too strange. If he continued like this, would he encounter the corpses of other sovereign emperors that he was familiar with? If that was the case, it would be too terrifying. Could it be that the path of creation was really the tomb of the sovereign emperors as mentioned in the legends? Because from the looks of it, many Emperor Lords had been buried here. Emperor Lords were invincible existences. The fall of one was already a huge matter. But this was actually the tomb of a Emperor Lord. This kind of feeling made Yi Shiwen's heart numb. However, this feeling only lasted for a moment. Then, Yi Shiwen returned to normal. He was a martial emperor. He had nothing to fear. As he walked further and further, he saw more and more similar remains. However, He didn't see a complete corpse like the one of the Heaven Lord. At most, there were only some remains. Yi Shiwen studied them as he walked. There were more or less traces of the great Tao left in these remains. For Yi Shiwen, it was also an eye-opener. This was because it was a completely different cultivation system. It was completely different from the system of the heavens. It was as if another door had been opened for Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen walked and looked along the way. He felt that his horizons had broadened, and his understanding of the Great Way was also constantly rising. Although his cultivation was restricted on this path of creation, it was still a good thing for him. He had never been so close to the Great Way before. From time to time, Yi Shiwen would stop and meditate on the Great Tao. As time passed, Yi Shiwen's own bridge to the fourth realm began to gradually strengthen, so Yi Shiwen was not in a hurry. There were even many great Tao insights that were completely above his own, which would be of great help to him in breaking through to the fifth, sixth, and seventh realms in the future. It was like adding a finishing touch. This gave Yi Shiwen a lot of enlightenment. These things couldn't be seen on ordinary days. It also made Yi Shiwen understand that a terrifying war had broken out here, and what kind of terrifying existences had fallen here. In the blink of an eye, 100 years passed in the blink of an eye. He had walked this short path for over 100 years, but the gains he had gained during this 100 years were practically not inferior to the gains he had gained from reading through the various imperial monarchs' legacies. As Yi Shiwen walked forward, he felt that the path ahead was getting wider and wider. Suddenly, a strange change occurred. A vast aura was spreading, and a shadow was taking shape in the void. It was incomparably majestic, and it seemed to have instantly absorbed the little spiritual energy on this path of creation. What kind of person was this? He had just appeared, and he was already so powerful. A shadow was almost absorbing all the spiritual energy. At this moment, Yi Shiwen felt that all the divine marks and laws were being used to cast a golden body. Who is it? Yi Shiwen suddenly felt a strong pressure, and then he felt a familiar feeling from that terrifying pressure. This is Emperor Primordius. His face suddenly changed. He had thought that he would encounter Emperor Primordius, but he absolutely did not expect to meet him here. This was the most terrifying and strongest opponent Yi Shiwen had ever encountered. I must stop his Tao body from taking shape? Yi Shiwen roared and blasted out the 6 paths of reincarnation fist, directly blasting towards the Tao body of Emperor Primordius that was still taking shape. During this time, because the heavenly way was sealed, the recovery was very slow, so Yi Shiwen even tried to use his spiritual power as little as possible. But at this time, he obviously could not care so much. He had fought with Emperor Primordius before, and he truly understood how terrifying Emperor Primordius was. In the myriad heavens realm, that was his territory, so he could still suppress Emperor Primordius. But now that he had left the myriad heavens realm, his advantage was no longer there. Boom! Yi Shiwen's 6 paths of reincarnation fist directly blasted into the body of Emperor Primordius, and in an instant, it was unknown how many laws were smashed, but more laws were condensing and taking shape. Again, Yi Shiwen blasted out a punch, and millions of laws condensed in his hand. Endless martial arts power rushed out from his fist, turning into a terrifying attack that swept out. Bang! This attack was blocked by Emperor Primordius's hand, and a somewhat sinister smile appeared on his face. Martial Emperor, finally we meet again. I knew this day would come. Seeing that he could not stop Emperor Primordius's Tao body from forming, Yi Shiwen immediately calmed down. I didn't expect your real body to be here, Yi Shiwen said coldly. He had always been wondering why Emperor Primordius could intervene in the affairs of the myriad heavens realm, but it was obvious that he could not intervene often. He had been planning for countless years, but he had only completed one Kurfürst road. What kind of real body is this? Emperor Primordius's Tao body sneered and said, "Even now, when it's time to face each other, you can only show up in your Taoist body. I guess there must be a reason why your real body can't show up. Let me guess, is it because you're still in closed-door cultivation? Or is it because you are imprisoned? Actually, you can't come out?" Yi Shiwen said coldly. Emperor Primordius's expression became colder and colder. Perhaps Yi Shiwen had hit his sore spot. "It seems that I am right. Your real body is imprisoned in a certain place and can't come out. Every time, you can only appear in your Tao body," Yi Shiwen said, but he was extremely shocked in his heart. One must know that a mere Tao body was already so terrifying. Just as he had guessed at the beginning, Emperor Primordius's real body was probably far stronger than everyone's imagination. But seeing that you can show your divinity in such a close place, could it be that the place where your real body is imprisoned is on this road of fortune? When he said this guess, Yi Shiwen was immediately shocked. If this was the case, it would be even more terrifying. Not to mention those emperors who had fallen on this road of fortune, even a character like Emperor Primordius was imprisoned here. How was this a blessed land? It was simply a peerlessly dangerous place that had never been seen since ancient times. What was Emperor Primordius's real cultivation? 7th realm, 8th realm, 9th realm? Yi Shiwen was unable to see through it now. He only knew that Emperor Primordius was extremely terrifying. Even if he was just a Tao body, he still possessed unimaginable power. "Martial Emperor, you don't need to guess anymore. From the day you broke my Tao body and ruined my plan, you were destined to die," Emperor Primordius said coldly. Obviously, he was extremely angry that Yi Shiwen had ruined his plan. That was a plan that he had prepared for many years, but it was ruined by Emperor Qin and Yi Shiwen one after another. The loss of his painstaking efforts was simply unimaginable. Others might not know, but he knew it the best. The opportunity to become an emperor was not cabbage on the roadside. There were as many as one wanted, and one had to pay a huge price for it. "Martial Emperor, you see it too. This is the tomb of the emperors, and you will also be buried here. Your flesh and blood will also become my power," Emperor Primordius said coldly. This was a peerless villain who dared to eat emperors. He was ridiculously tyrannical. Yi Shiwen stared at Emperor Primordius indifferently and said, "For so many years, have you been relying on devouring the flesh and blood of these emperors to survive?" He somewhat understood why the skeletons of those emperors he had seen before were only skeletons. Not to mention how strange this path of creation was, just Emperor Primordius alone was enough to completely turn this path of creation into a peerlessly dangerous place. "Prolong my days? That's right, I'll prolong my life until the final moment arrives. I won't die." Emperor Primordius made his move in an instant. His entire body instantly turned into a chaotic, ferocious bird, and he swooped down. Almost instantly, he formed a huge seal ribbon and suppressed towards Yi Shiwen. How could Yi Shiwen allow himself to be captured so easily? He immediately blasted out the 6 paths of reincarnation fist, and the magic power of his entire body was raised to the peak. With his current cultivation, there were actually very few people in the world who could make him fight with all his strength. However, Emperor Primordius definitely had such qualifications. Boom! An astonishing collision sound caused the river of time to collapse, and it seemed as if the world was about to completely shatter in an instant. However, after this force swept outwards a little, it was suppressed by a mysterious force and turned into nothingness. The firmness of the space of this path of creation was also the strongest that Yi Shiwen had ever seen. The two exchanged blows, and they were evenly matched. Both possessed terrifying combat power that could reverse time and space. Emperor Primordius, is this the limit of your incarnation? Compared to before, it has not improved at all. Yi Shiwen laughed loudly. Chapter 30:15. Yi Shiwen, do you think you can be so arrogant with your current state? Emperor Primordius was not angry. He just swooped down towards Yi Shiwen. This chaotic, ferocious bird was composed of countless chaotic laws, forming a terrifying creature and existence. It directly swooped down, terrifying to the extreme. In the face of this incomparably terrifying existence, Yi Shiwen's hair was flying in the air, and his eyes were cold. He evolved his Tao and techniques to the limit. In order to fight against an existence like Emperor Primordius, he must improve his state to the extreme. Bang! The two of them collided in mid-air, and a loud explosion spread out. Both of them were clearly determined to end this battle as soon as possible. One must know that this place was not a good place. It was difficult to replenish the source energy consumed. Under such circumstances, the battle between the two was ruthless to the extreme. In particular, the methods of the two were far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. They were fast and ruthless. Bang! 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 The two fought from one end of the ancient road to the other, rushing all the way. Above the sky there were huge cracks everywhere. He was torn out by the two. Although the suppression of the laws was very serious, the two were too strong. They directly tore the laws apart. Yi Shiwen's physical body was invincible. His punches and kicks could pierce through the body of Emperor Primordius. However, the body of Emperor Primordius was composed of endless laws, so it was not afraid of such injuries. Therefore, the two were entangled, and it was hard to separate them. This wasn't like when he was in the myriad heavens world. The power that Yi Shiwen could mobilize was far inferior. If Yi Shiwen's cultivation hadn't advanced a step further during this period of time and reached the peak of the third realm, he would have suffered a great loss when facing such a powerful Emperor Hunyuan. Once he suffered a great loss, it would be difficult to recover in such a place. Therefore, Yi Shiwen was very clear that he could not continue to entangle with the other party here. Most importantly, Yi Shiwen did not know where the real body of Emperor Primordius was. He could only guess that it was in this path of creation. If that was the case, then it was too dangerous. Although it was possible that he was imprisoned, judging from the fact that he was able to create clones time and time again, it was clear that the cage wasn't that sturdy. Only God knew what kind of power could seep out from it. At this time, the only outcome of resisting here was to become an existence like the skeleton underground. Therefore, he was practically fighting his way forward from the other end of the path of creation. Since this was a path and someone had come in, then there must be an exit. It was just that he had not found the exit previously. He was certain of this. You want to leave? Emperor Primordius clearly sensed Yi Shiwen's thoughts. He immediately understood what Yi Shiwen was planning to do. But how could he let Yi Shiwen go? It was not easy for someone to come in again. It had been a long time since he had truly devoured vitality. You want to stop me? Yi Shiwen sneered. He punched out and sent Emperor Primordius flying. The huge bird's body flew 3,000 miles away on the spot. Whoosh! A pair of wings suddenly sprouted from Yi Shiwen's back, and he instantly flew out, directly flying towards the other end of the path of fortune. This path also looked extremely simple. There were no other exits, and it was just a section of the road, that's all. The moment he was sent flying by Yi Shiwen, Emperor Primordius immediately flew back and caught up with Yi Shiwen. The two of them chased each other. The movement techniques they possessed were all top-notch in the world. They flew from one end of the path to the other in almost an instant. Yi Shiwen suddenly stopped because there was no more path in front of him. All that was left was the scene of the surging immortal mist. It was like a boundless sea of immortal mist. Ha ha ha, Yi Shiwen, you can't escape. Emperor Primordius caught up. He couldn't help but burst into laughter when he saw this scene. This is a tomb. The tomb of an emperor. Since you've come in, don't think of escaping? The tomb of an emperor? I don't believe in such a thing. Emperor Qin has also come in. I'm afraid he has already left, Yi Shiwen said with a cold smile. Emperor Qin's strength was much more tyrannical than his current strength. In other words, Emperor Primordius definitely couldn't stop such an existence. Since he didn't see Emperor Qin now, he should have left. Humph. Emperor Primordius took a step forward and stomped. His leg tore through the night sky and smashed towards Yi Shiwen. At this time, he didn't transform into his bird form because it was of no use to Yi Shiwen. Bang! Yi Shiwen raised his hand and blocked this attack. Then, he suddenly pulled out a long sword from his hand. Die! The Avicii sword in Yi Shiwen's hand erupted with a terrifying sword light. It soared into the sky and smashed towards Emperor Primordius. Poochie! Emperor Primordius didn't have the slightest time to defend himself. He was slashed in half by the sword. Boom! 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 A series of rumbling sounds were heard. The Avicii sword in Yi Shiwen's hand fiercely slashed towards Emperor Hunyuan. Emperor Hunyuan's body was smashed into pieces again and again. Yi Shiwen's offensive was like a storm. He simply couldn't find the slightest leeway to fight back. Emperor Primordius's body was formed by countless law incarnations. Therefore, he wasn't afraid of some fatal attacks. But at the same time, this was his biggest weakness. He wasn't a match for Yi Shiwen's pure physical body. Freeze! Yi Shiwen shouted loudly, and a seal appeared on Emperor Primordial Chaos's body, firmly sealing him. Martial Emperor, you are too naive. Do you think such a small seal can seal me? Primordius Empyrean sneered. He didn't take this seal seriously at all. With a sudden struggle, cracks appeared on the seal. I can't seal you. But I don't plan to seal you. It will be enough as long as it lasts for a period of time. Yi Shiwen smiled slightly. This series of attacks had consumed 1/3 of his spiritual power. It should be known that only a short period of time had passed. One could imagine the huge consumption of spiritual power in a battle between emperors. If this battle continued, he would soon be exhausted without replenishment. This was definitely not what Yi Shiwen wanted. Yi Shiwen shouted loudly. His voice was loud and clear. The spiritual power of his body was also raised to the peak. He punched forward with all his strength. Boom! With a loud roar, heaven and earth trembled violently. The sea of immortal mist that was originally boiling suddenly rolled, as if a huge crack had been torn open in the sky. Not good! Emperor Primordius immediately knew what Yi Shiwen wanted to do. His complexion changed immediately. If Yi Shiwen escaped this time, and he failed to devour Yi Shiwen's body to restore part of his strength, the consequences would be unimaginable. Just thinking about it made him feel a chill down his spine. Boom! Emperor Hunyuan let out a long howl, and shattered the seal on his body. Then, he chased after Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen didn't even look at him. He took a step forward and directly crossed into the space crack where the immortal mist was boiling. Damn it, don't even think of leaving. Emperor Primordius looked ferocious. Countless bloody lights began to burn on his body. A terrifying power was boiling. Die for me, summon! As soon as Emperor Primordius's voice fell, the sound of iron chains dragging on the ground came. Then, a bloody figure flew from a distance. This bloody figure was a spear. The spear pierced through the sky, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. The spear was dragging an endless chain behind it. It was unknown what it was made of, but it was incomparably long, as though it was dragged from the end of time. This spear was originally locked by this chain, but as Empyrean Emperor Primordius used his own flesh and blood as a medium, this spear was forcibly summoned over. This spear broke through the vast sky, and rushed towards Yi Shiwen to kill him. Not good. What is this? Yi Shiwen had already stepped out of the crack, but the speed of the spear behind him was too fast. It almost instantly caught up to him. At this time, he clearly saw what this spear was. This spear exuded a terrible aura of destruction. It had a terrifying aura. In an instant, it had already pierced Yi Shiwen's body. Boom! The time robe on Yi Shiwen's body was stimulated and activated. It formed a time domain to protect Yi Shiwen. However, the spear immediately pierced through the time domain and bombarded the body of the time robe. Cracks started to appear on the originally sturdy time robe, and densely packed cracks started to spread in all directions. Then, the spear's momentum didn't slow down, and it directly blasted into Yi Shiwen's body. Although Yi Shiwen's body was the gilded tyrant form, which was tyrannical beyond imagination, this spear contained the terrifying power of the Emperor Primordius. It was unknown how it was forged. It was terrifying to the extreme. The spear directly pierced through Yi Shiwen. Poochie! Blood suddenly splashed out and scattered into the immortal mist. Swoosh! In the next moment, this spear was forcibly dragged back by the terrifying power attached to the iron chain. It once again turned into a cloud of blood mist and disappeared into the sky. Just now, Emperor Primordius used his own flesh and blood as a blood sacrifice to barely summon the spear. But then, it was sealed back in an instant. However, this attack was enough. This spear had pierced through Yi Shiwen and seriously injured him. Yi Shiwen's figure fell directly into the crack. Chapter 30:16. An endless mountain range. In the sky above the mountain range, a pale purple barrier isolated everything. A cyan figure sat cross-legged in the mountain range. There was a huge bloody hole in his chest, which looked very frightening. Balls of golden light flickered in the bloody hole, and the cries of phoenixes could be heard. Behind him, there seemed to be a divine phoenix that was about to soar into the sky. No, I still failed. Yi Shiwen sighed slightly. Emperor Huanyuan's spear had seriously injured him. Even now, there was no way for him to recover. Even his gilded tyrant form could not resist the law of corrosion contained in this spear. It could be seen that Emperor Huanyuan's understanding of this law was far beyond Yi Shiwen's imagination. If it were an ordinary person, they would have died long ago. However, Yi Shiwen was barely able to support himself. He used his huge martial power to suppress the injury on his chest. Emperor Huanyuan's spear was too strong. Yi Shiwen thought about it now. He was afraid that he still had no way to resist it. If he encountered it again in the future, how could he resist it? His martial power was far inferior to Emperor Huanyuan's. He must find a way to improve himself. Otherwise, he would not be a match for him. He had been recuperating in this place for 3 days and 3 nights. Finally, he had given up. He had fallen into this world that was surrounded by the enchantment. This enchantment was also ridiculously hard. Yi Shiwen, who had already been seriously injured, had suffered even more serious injuries. Senior sister, did you hear? A few days ago, there seemed to be a strange stone that hit the barrier. Even the barrier was smashed open. A voice came from afar. Yi Shiwen looked and saw a group of 7 or 8 figures walking over. Senior sister, there are people over there? These 7 or 8 people looked at Yi Shiwen. Both sides' eyes met. They saw that these people were young men and women in their 20s. They were led by a woman wearing a light yellow dress. She looked quite otherworldly. These young men and women were also led by this woman. Yi Shiwen glanced at them and then closed his eyes. Although he was seriously injured, these people were not enough to pose any threat to him. Among these people, this woman called Senior Sister was the strongest. She had actually entered the early stage of Quasi-Emperor. As for the others, they were mostly God Lord and God King. Even in a seriously injured state, Yi Shiwen could easily kill a group of such cultivators. This group of people immediately became vigilant when they saw Yi Shiwen. After all, it wasn't a good thing to find someone here at this time. Brother, how should I address you? That woman glanced at Yi Shiwen. She couldn't see through Yi Shiwen's level, but she could see that he was injured. Yi Shiwen opened his eyes and glanced at the woman. His magical power fluctuated. He had already mastered this woman's language in a short period of time. This was as easy as lifting a finger for him. Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen slowly opened his mouth and said, "You are looking for it, right? Take it away." Beside Yi Shiwen, there was a stalk of divine grass that was emitting a golden light. "Senior sister, I told you so. It really is the sky dew grass." Although he was only a divine master, his cultivation base was the lowest among these people. However, when it came to finding treasures, he had his own abilities. "That's right, it's the divine master realm." "Thank you, brother." The woman couldn't help but cup her hands. Then, she raised her hand and grabbed the stalk of sky dew grass. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief when they saw that they had managed to obtain the heavenly dew grass in the end. After all, in this secret territory, there were too many battles that broke out over a heavenly dew grass. They were afraid that Yi Shiwen would fall out with them because of this. However, they didn't know that a mere sky dew grass wasn't attractive to Yi Shiwen at all. "By the way, I have something to ask," Yi Shiwen said. "What would you like to ask, brother?" the woman in the yellow dress asked. She relaxed a little when she saw that Yi Shiwen didn't want to fight with them for the sky dew grass. "I want to ask where this place is. I accidentally entered this place. I wonder if you can answer my question," Yi Shiwen asked. "Accidentally entered?" Everyone looked at Yi Shiwen in astonishment. They couldn't believe it. Where was this place? How could he have entered by mistake? How could he have entered by mistake? They didn't know how much they had paid to fight for a place to enter this place. If it wasn't for the fact that they were close by, it would have been impossible. However, this man had actually entered by mistake. His luck was simply heaven-defying. At least, in their opinion, his luck was indeed heaven-defying. However, the woman in the yellow dress seemed to have thought of something. She had just mentioned her sect. Although Tianxian Pavilion wasn't a particularly powerful sect in this area, it was still considered a local tyrant. However, the other party had actually not heard of it. This in itself was very suspicious. Moreover, he had said that he had entered by mistake. Could it be the outer sky meteorite that was mentioned a few days ago? She wasn't stupid, so she immediately thought of something. If that was the case, then this man in front of her was probably far beyond her initial expectations. "Brother Yi, this is the Celestial Pole Island. The Celestial Pole Island only appears once every 100,000 years. This time, it is under the rule of the Eastern Tianzuan. The mountain gate of our Tianxian Pavilion happens to be nearby, so we have the opportunity to enter the Celestial Pole Island," the woman in the yellow dress said. She looked at Yi Shiwen's appearance again. However, she didn't reveal any expression of sudden realization. She still had an indifferent look on her face. Obviously, she wasn't familiar with him at all. Eastern Tianzuan, Celestial Pole Island, Tianxian Pavilion. Countless speculations flashed in Yi Shiwen's mind. Who was the Eastern Tianzuan? What kind of place was this Celestial Pole Island? How did it open? So that's how it is. It seems that entering this Celestial Pole Island is not easy, Yi Shiwen said. He had accidentally bumped into such a place. And he had even broken the barrier. It was really funny to imagine it. Yes, except for the sects that happen to be in the vicinity, the people who can enter this place are the powerful clans of our Fortune God dynasty, the woman in the yellow dress said seriously. Fortune God dynasty. Yi Shiwen heard another name. Brother Yi doesn't seem to be familiar with this place. Could it be that you are from the outer domain? The woman in the yellow dress asked tentatively. Yi Shiwen could only vaguely nod his head. I have been cultivating for many years. I just came out to travel, so I'm not very familiar with the expression of this Fortune God dynasty. So that's how it is. No wonder. The woman in the yellow dress suddenly understood. Then, the woman in the yellow dress explained to Yi Shiwen. Just as Yi Shiwen had guessed, this place was the end of the road of fortune, the fortune world. However, the current fortune world was ruled by a colossus called the Fortune God Dynasty. The Fortune God Dynasty ruled the central area of the fortune world. It could be said that its territory was unimaginably vast. Even with the cultivation of a quasi-emperor like the woman in the yellow dress, it would take her a long time to traverse across the entire Fortune God Dynasty. Under the Fortune God Dynasty, there were 4 heavenly masters who ruled the 4 directions and guarded the borders of the Fortune God Dynasty. Around the Fortune God Dynasty was the so-called outer domain. Many rogue cultivators and all kinds of ferocious creatures lived in the outer domain. It was these creatures that formed the entire Fortune God Dynasty. It was said that the entire history of the Fortune God Dynasty could no longer be verified. At the very least, it was impossible to verify the history of the Fortune God Dynasty with the mysterious Sky Pavilion's ability. A very, very long time ago, before the mysterious Sky Pavilion came into existence, the Fortune God Dynasty had already existed. In those days, there was a supreme existence who broke through the void and controlled the fortune world. He established the current Fortune God Dynasty, and the rule of the Fortune God Dynasty continued to this day. In the Fortune God Dynasty, the strongest experts were called Heavenly Masters. No one knew how terrifying their cultivation was. Some people said that they were experts of the 9th level, while others said that they were existences above the 9th level. However, without reaching that level, it was impossible to find out. In the Fortune Divine Dynasty, although a quasi-emperor had some status, it didn't count for much. Only a true Emperor Realm Lord could become a Lord of a territory. Once an Emperor Realm Lord was willing to submit to the Fortune Divine Dynasty, he would immediately be conferred the title of Lord of a territory, commanding countless people. That was a true hero of a territory. Currently, no one could find out how many powerful emperors there were in the Fortune God Dynasty, and it was not something that the woman in the yellow dress could come into contact with, because the woman in the yellow dress was only a disciple of the mysterious Sky Pavilion, an unremarkable sect under the rule of the Eastern Heavenly Venerate. In the Heavenly Profound Pavilion, even a quasi-emperor was as rare as a phoenix feather or a unicorn horn, let alone a sovereign emperor. Once a sect could produce a sovereign emperor, that sect would immediately soar into the sky and become a phoenix. Even the Eastern Celestial Sovereign would have to treat them like an honored guest. Therefore, the woman in the yellow dress only heard about the emperor, and did not really know about it. The yellow-dressed woman was the great senior sister of the Tianxian Pavilion. Her name was Fairy Jiangzhu. Her cultivation was also outstanding in the Tianxian Pavilion. This time, it was Fairy Jiangzhu who led them to the Celestial Pole Island. The Extreme Sky Island only appeared once every 100,000 years, and every time it appeared, its location was different. Every time it appeared, it would attract countless geniuses from powerful families to compete for it, because there were too many benefits in the Extreme Sky Island. It was said that the Extreme Sky Island used to be an ancient battlefield, but was later sent flying by a heavenly venerate. Since then, it had been wandering in the endless space, and only appeared occasionally. This time, the Extreme Sky Island just happened to appear in the vicinity of the mysterious Sky Pavilion's encampment, so they had the opportunity to enter the Extreme Sky Island to look for some rare treasures. They also wanted to try their luck and see if they could have some fortuitous encounters. I see. Many thanks for Fairy Jiangzhu's explanation, but I want to ask, how can we leave the Extreme Sky Island? Yi Shiwen asked. Chapter 30:17. I see. Thank you for dispelling my doubts. However, I would like to ask, how can I leave this celestial island? Yi Shiwen asked. I'm afraid you will have to wait for a while if you want to leave the celestial island. Every time the celestial island opens, it will be open for 100 years. Only half of the time has passed. Fairy Jiangzhu replied. That is to say, there are still 50 years left. Yi Shiwen frowned slightly. The restriction on the celestial island was very powerful. He had tried to break it before, but he still couldn't break it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have asked. It was a miracle that he couldn't break it with his emperor-level strength. In the myriad heavens, this was absolutely impossible. In the fortune realm, however, he discovered that his strength had been greatly restricted. He could no longer fight in battles that could easily destroy heaven and earth. However, in comparison, it was still a little more relaxed than it was on the path of fortune. The path of fortune was truly a hopeless situation. Even with his sovereign emperor-level cultivation, it was extremely difficult for him to even recover his strength. Yes, Fairy Jiangzhu said. All right, then I will wait for another 50 years. Yi Shiwen said faintly. He could take advantage of this period of time to heal his injuries. If he was on the road of fortune, such a serious injury could not be treated at all. It would be difficult for him to even recover his strength. However, it was much better here. He could slowly recover. However, it will be very difficult to recover from this injury within 50 years. It is better to find some herbs to refine healing pills. Yi Shiwen had a lot of heavenly treasures on his body. However, he didn't have any of them that could heal his level of injuries. However, he had previously obtained an incomplete letter from the Medicine Emperor, and it had recorded something called Heavenly Vitality Restoring Pill. This pill could heal even the injuries of an emperor-level expert. Thank you for dispelling my doubts. Yi Shiwen cupped his hands and said. It's nothing. It's just a piece of cake. Fairy Jiangzhu hurriedly said. She could feel how terrifying this seemingly ordinary young man was. At the very least, he gave her a feeling that he was unfathomable. In the past, only the unfathomable great elder of the Tianxian Pavilion could make her feel this way. He was a super-existence that was only one step away from entering the emperor level. If that's the case, we'll take our leave first. In the end, Fairy Jiangzhu decided to leave. The youth in front of her seemed easygoing, but he had an indescribably aloof aura. This was something that could only be cultivated by someone who had been in a high position for a long time. He spoke and acted calmly, as if there was nothing in this world that could make him feel awkward. It was difficult to distinguish between friend and foe. In this unknown celestial pole island, it was best not to get too close to him. Here, only the seniors and juniors in the sect could be trusted. Everyone else was in danger. Well, go ahead, Yi Shiwen said in a light tone. The people of Tianxian Pavilion quickly took their leave, and only after they were thousands of miles away from Yi Shiwen did they finally heave a sigh of relief. Their skills were limited, so they simply couldn't see what was so terrifying about Yi Shiwen. However, the people who were able to ascend the island were not ordinary people. This kind of seemingly ordinary imposing manner was the most terrifying thing about him. Furthermore, as their senior sister and the most powerful disciple in the sect, Fairy Jiangzhu was also very cautious, which made them even more nervous. Senior sister, where did this person come from? One of them said cautiously. He said that he had sealed the surroundings for fear that someone would eavesdrop on them. I don't know, but no matter what, it's best not to provoke him. Fairy Jiangzhu also had a lingering feeling of fear. She couldn't see through Yi Shiwen at all. It was as if she was looking at the formation of a universe. Even with her experience, she couldn't tell what this feeling was. She just felt that it was unfathomable. However, they didn't know that every word of their conversation had fallen into Yi Shiwen's ears. His skills were much higher than these people of the Tianxian Pavilion. Even if he was injured, it was not something they could compare to. Let's find all the medicinal herbs first. Yi Shiwen got up. Anyway, he still had plenty of time, so he was not in a hurry. According to what Fairy Jiangzhu had said, there were all kinds of markets on Celestial Pole Island. It was a place for the geniuses of the great clans to exchange their goods. If he wanted to collect all the medicinal herbs, he naturally needed to find this place. He had the Dan recipe in his mind. Although there might not be the herbs he wanted to find here, he had already gone very far on this path. Many of the herbs in the Dan recipe could actually be substituted with each other. As long as he could understand the medicinal properties of the herbs and understand the various principles, he could freely combine the Dan recipe. It was not a big market. Many of the architectural styles were quite strange, but they were in line with the Tao and had a simple and unadorned flavor. A tyrannical aura was hidden within. Every stall owner was, without exception, an expert of the divine king level. Moreover, all of them were extremely valiant. Even among the divine kings, they were the most valiant group of people. They were not existences that could be seen normally. Yi Shiwen walked into this noisy bazaar step by step. His eyes swept over these stalls. The items on these stalls were protected by restrictive spells. However, these restrictive spells couldn't stop Yi Shiwen at all. Even with his current cultivation, it was not difficult for him to understand the age and function of these heavenly treasures at a glance. "Brother, what do you want to buy?" Seeing Yi Shiwen pass by several stalls in succession, but give up after a glance, and not even look at them again, a sturdy man with a single horn on his head suddenly stepped forward and said, "I want to buy some medicinal herbs." Yi Shiwen replied, "Then you have found the right person. There is no one better than me to buy medicinal herbs." The stall owner immediately said. He saw that Yi Shiwen's temperament was extraordinary, so he presumably was not an ordinary person. This kind of person was the most difficult to serve, but conversely, he was also an extremely wealthy existence. Yi Shiwen glanced at the stall owner, and then listed out a list of medicinal herbs that he needed. There were thousands of medicinal herbs on the list. "There are a lot of these medicinal herbs. I can get them, but it may take some time to concoct them." He said to the one-horned stall owner, "Brother, you may not be able to find anyone else, but you can definitely find me. The people of our Sky Commerce Alliance don't have much else, but we do business wherever we go." Yi Shiwen's expression did not change, but he evaluated in his heart. The list of medicinal herbs that he provided could be found in the myriad heavens, and it seemed that this fortune realm also had them. However, he immediately thought about it. Although the laws and the great way of the fortune realm were more profound than those of the myriad heavens, they were generally of the same origin. In the case of the same laws, they could naturally produce the same heavenly treasures. Just like the earth and the heaven realm, the only difference was that heavenly treasures that were very rare on the earth might be very common in the heaven realm, and could be found everywhere. However, Yi Shiwen immediately thought that the laws of both places were of the same origin. Could it be that the fortune realm and the myriad heavens were actually related in some way? In an instant, many thoughts and ideas flashed through his mind like a supercomputer, and he began to calculate crazily. Huang Xiaolong had heard Fairy Jiangzhu mention the Sky Business Alliance in the past. It was a famous colossus in the Fortune God dynasty. However, wherever the Sky Business Alliance went, the Sky Business Alliance did business. Other people wouldn't bring so many herbs with them because they were useless. However, the Sky Business Alliance was different. Even after entering the Sky Pole Island, they didn't forget to do business. The Tao that they cultivated was also related to this. They used business to prove their Tao. The old ancestor of the Sky Commerce Alliance was an emperor who used business to prove his Tao. Among the many famous emperors, he was one of the best. The strangest thing was that they fought like local tycoons, and they did not lack money at all. This made many people feel helpless against the people of the Sky Commerce Alliance. They did not lack money, and their combat power was tyrannical. Because they did not lack money, they could purchase all kinds of powerful secret techniques, and their combat power was often unexpected. How long will it take? Yi Shiwen asked. Because many of the medicinal ingredients are not with me, they are with my senior brother, and my senior brother is not here. It will take at least several months to gather all of them. I don't know if brother can wait, the single-horned man said. That's because many of the medicinal ingredients are not with me, they are with my senior brother, and my senior brother is not here. A few months? Sure. Yi Shiwen nodded. Anyway, he could wait for dozens of years, so a few months was nothing to him. Okay, but according to the rules of our Sky Commerce Alliance, you must have something as collateral. You see. The one-horned man looked at Yi Shiwen with a bit of embarrassment and said, This is fine. Yi Shiwen turned his palm, and a thumb-sized thunderbolt energy appeared in his hand. Thunder Source. The one-horned man's eyes widened when he saw this thing. This thunder source was nothing for Yi Shiwen, and he could condense it casually. After all, one of his top 100 martial arts was the Tao of Thunder. But for the one-horned man, it was a rare treasure. Although it did not seem to be formed naturally, it was purer than a natural one. It was bottomless, and it was definitely very precious. No problem, haha, I knew that brother is a noble person. The one-horned man quickly and carefully put away the thunder source in Yi Shiwen's hand. The merchants of the Sky Commerce Alliance only believed in one rule when it came to their customers, and that was, the customers were the heavenly masters. I will come back to find you in half a year. I believe that you should be ready by then. Yi Shiwen said. Brother, aren't you afraid that I will run away with the thunder source? The one-horned man saw that Yi Shiwen didn't care at all, and couldn't help but ask. This is just a small thing for me, not worth mentioning. You are willing to exchange your life for it, so I have nothing to be afraid of. Chapter 30:18. It's just a small thing that's not worth mentioning to me. You're willing to exchange your life for it. So, what do I have to be afraid of? Yi Shiwen replied with an indifferent look on his face. The one-horned man suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. He didn't know why, but he felt that Yi Shiwen wasn't joking when he said this. He knew that Yi Shiwen wasn't bluffing him. If he really escaped with the thunder source, then he would most likely die. He felt as if he couldn't escape from Yi Shiwen's warning even if he fled the entire fortune world. He suddenly felt a little strange. He had concealed his cultivation very deeply. However, he knew that he had already stepped into the quasi-emperor realm. So, how could this person be so terrifying? He had been cultivating for a long time. So, he didn't believe that this was an illusion. After all, it was impossible for a practitioner of his level to be an illusion. Of course. He, distinguished guest, you must be joking. The one-horned man quickly replied with a smile. He had just been joking a while ago. Now, he was trying to curry favor with Yi Shiwen. This thunder source wasn't very useful for him. However, it was very precious for a practitioner of the thunder path. So, it was needless to say how precious it was. This kind of thing couldn't be compared with ordinary heavenly treasures. It could be said to be priceless. It was definitely enough as a deposit. Since there are no more questions, then I'll take my leave first, Yi Shiwen said. He could feel that a greedy look had appeared in the eyes of some of the stall owners when he had casually taken out the thunder source. In fact, some of them would have robbed him on the spot if they weren't afraid of his unfathomable strength. What was integrity in such a place? Could it be eaten? Take care, distinguished guest, take care, the one-horned man said in a flattering manner. He quickly put away the thunder source in his bosom, and then sent a message to his senior brother, who was far away in the distance. Yi Shiwen was expressionless. However, the one-horned man's actions were all under his control. They were really good to be able to bring their merchants to this place. Suddenly, a knight descended from the sky. He was riding a ferocious beast whose whole body was burning with flames. Everyone's expression suddenly turned dignified when they saw the emblem on the knight's body. May I ask if you are the Heavenly Law Union's emissary? Someone gathered his courage and asked. That's right. I've received an order from the Heavenly Tao Alliance's alliance leader. Anyone who sees this woman and reports the news will be rewarded handsomely. If anyone can capture her, our alliance leader has said that he can make an exception and recruit them into the Heavenly Tao Alliance. The knight looked around at the crowd and said, What? Bring in the Heavenly Taoism? Many people couldn't remain calm when they heard this news. Everyone knew what kind of existence the Heavenly Law School was. It was one of the few unparalleled giants in the world. There were countless experts in the Heavenly Law School. Among them, the headmaster of the Heavenly Law School was known to be an existence that could contend with celestial venerables. Many of the people who set up stalls here were independent cultivators who had appeared around the Empyrean Pole Island this time. Their cultivation was rather limited, mainly because they did not have a master. There were very few people like the Horned Man who had already reached the quasi-emperor realm. Most of them were actually divine kings, and they might not even reach the quasi-emperor realm in their entire lives. Even in the fortune world, the difference between a god-king and a quasi-emperor was as great as the distance between heaven and earth. Therefore, this order was extremely attractive to them. Everyone looked over and saw that the image of a woman had appeared on the palm of the horseman. It was a young girl who seemed to be around 17 or 18 years old. She was wearing a light purple dress and holding a long sword in her hand. She looked extremely valiant and threatening. A sharp sword could destroy everything even through the image. May I ask the honorable envoy, what is the name of this woman? Someone asked with an excited look on his face. It should be known that if they could capture this woman, they would be able to reach the sky in a single bound. In the future, they would also have the opportunity to reach the quasi-emperor realm. As for the sovereign emperor realm, it was not something that they could hope to reach. They did not even dare to hope for it. Even in the vast fortune world, the sovereign emperor realm was still very high and unreachable. For most people, the experts of the sovereign emperor realm could only be imagined. This bitch's name is Qin Wugo. Once you have any news of this bitch, you can send a message to our alliance immediately. Our alliance will immediately send people to kill her, the horseman said as he glanced at the crowd. Could it be that Qin Wugo is related to that person? While everyone was suddenly enlightened, the one-horned man suddenly thought of something and immediately became somewhat frightened. He seemed to have thought of something. If this was really the case, it was no wonder that the Heavenly Law Alliance wanted to kill Qin Wugo. This matter involved an ancient past. If he was not a disciple of a famous sect, he might not even know about it. Countless years ago, an emperor appeared out of nowhere and was suppressed by the Heavenly Law Alliance at that time. Unexpectedly, the Heavenly Law Alliance was not able to suppress this emperor. Instead, they were repeatedly slapped in the face. In the end, even the sect leader of the Heavenly Law Alliance was unable to do anything to this strange person. In the end, he left calmly. And that person also seemed to have the surname Qin. However, at that time everyone was shocked. No one knew why this emperor with the surname Qin wanted to cause such a ruckus in the Heavenly Law Alliance. However, from that day on, the Heavenly Law Alliance had secretly issued a warrant for this emperor with the surname Qin. However, as time passed, this emperor with the surname Qin never appeared again. Therefore, many people had long forgotten about him. You actually know? The horseman said as he looked at the one-horned man with a rather surprised expression. This one is the Heavenly Business Alliance's star merchant Z. The one-horned man saw that the horseman's killing intent had risen in the horseman's heart, and immediately blurted out his identity. Sure enough, the horseman's killing intent immediately dissipated after hearing the horseman's identity. Although their Heavenly Law Alliance was tyrannical, they didn't want to offend the Heavenly Business Alliance. There was no need to do so. Instead, it would make them enemies. The Heavenly Business Alliance was one of the giants in another domain of the Fortune Divine Dynasty. So, it's a Taoist brother from the Heavenly Business Alliance. If Taoist brother has any news about this matter, please inform me immediately. The horseman's expression became much better as he said, well said, well said. If I know anything, I will certainly inform you. The one-horned man, Star Merchant Z, said. However, his heart was filled with disdain. Their Heavenly Business Alliance didn't support their disciples getting involved in such dispute. Harmony brought wealth, and that was their way of survival. Although the Heavenly Law Alliance was powerful, the Emperor with the surname Qin, who had rendered the Heavenly Law Alliance helpless, was also not a simple character. If this Emperor were to cause havoc in the Heavenly Business Alliance again, the old monsters in the Alliance would definitely tear him apart and swallow him whole. Heavenly Law Alliance? Yi Shiwen suddenly remembered that this was an alliance formed by the disciples of the Heavenly Law Sect. In addition to the disciples of the Heavenly Law Sect, there were also many disciples of other forces attached to the Heavenly Law Sect. It was one of the strongest alliances on the Heavenly Pole Island. However, this thought only flashed in his mind for a moment. Yi Shiwen continued to walk outside. Wait a minute, the one wearing cyan clothes? Suddenly, a huge beast's claw fell from the sky and directly grabbed towards Yi Shiwen's direction. This beast's claw was covered in endless flames. It seemed as if it had come from the depths of hell, and directly grabbed towards Yi Shiwen. Bang! Yi Shiwen stopped. This beast's claw had torn a huge crack in the ground in front of him. Yi Shiwen slowly turned his head. A killing intention flashed in his eyes the moment he turned his head. The ominous beast that the horseman was riding on was carrying the horseman towards Yi Shiwen. I haven't finished speaking and you dare to leave. You are very courageous. The horseman looked at Yi Shiwen and said in a bad mood, Heavenly Law Alliance? I advise you not to be so shameless. Yi Shiwen slowly said. An angry look suddenly appeared on the horseman's face. Yi Shiwen's words were clearly implying that he was a fox exploiting the tiger's might. He had originally wanted to teach this guy a lesson, but now a killing intention had emerged in his heart. You are very courageous. You actually dare to oppose our Heavenly Law Alliance. Now kneel down and admit your mistake. Then cut off one of your arms and we will forget about this matter. The horseman coldly looked at Yi Shiwen and said. In his opinion, Yi Shiwen had made him lose face in front of everyone. So, he had to pay an absolute price. So what if I oppose your Heavenly Law Alliance? Cut off one of your arms? Just you? Yi Shiwen coldly smiled and said, Ha ha ha, that's right. What's so great about the Heavenly Law Alliance? Not to mention, it's just a small fry who has come from nowhere. He is using the tiger's skin of the Heavenly Law Alliance as a banner. Suddenly, a silvery laughter resounded from the void. A scantily clad young girl stepped out from the void. There was a teasing smile on this young girl's face. However, her expression was extremely charming. Everyone present on the scene couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva along with her laughter. It seemed as if they had been affected by her charm. Her charm technique is pretty good. Yi Shiwen secretly evaluated in his heart. This young girl was born to be charming. Moreover, she had also cultivated a charm technique. It would be very difficult for people of the same level to resist her charm technique. They would be affected by it. However, Yi Shiwen had already become an emperor. So, this kind of charm technique couldn't affect him. It could only cleanse his mind. He wouldn't be affected. That young girl's voice had barely faded when she looked at Yi Shiwen in a strange manner. It seemed as if she hadn't expected that this young man wouldn't be affected by her charm technique. She was very clear about the extent of her charm technique. Almost no one in the same generation could resist it. However, this young man was very calm. Chapter 30-19. She had an innate charm. Moreover, she had also cultivated a top-notch charm technique. So, it could be said that her attraction towards the opposite sex had reached the pinnacle. Only a few ascetic cultivators could resist her charm. Could it be that this ordinary-looking young man is also an ascetic cultivator? However, he had an innate temperament on his body even though he didn't look amazing. This made him look even more attractive. Charm technique. A wisp of blood overflowed from the corner of that knight's mouth. He had bitten his tongue at this critical moment to maintain his sobriety. Fairy Tianmiao, do you want to oppose our Heavenly Tao Union? Don't use the Heavenly Tao Union to scare people. Do you think you can scare anyone? You see, this man isn't afraid of your Heavenly Tao Union. The scantily clad girl smiled as she directed the topic of conversation towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's brows slightly wrinkled. He wasn't afraid. However, this girl had directed the topic of conversation towards him. It was obvious that she wasn't a good person. Humph, you dare to look down on our Heavenly Tao Union? I think you're courting death. However, Fairy Tianmiao, don't be complacent. I advise you not to intervene. Otherwise, I'm sorry, the knight said in a cold voice. His expression had become firm once again. Intervene? How can I not intervene? Wu Go and I are best sisters. Your Heavenly Tao Union dares to hunt her down. How can I not intervene? Fairy Tianmiao said with a smile, as if she was talking about something unimportant. However, the killing intent in her words made everyone feel a chill down their spines. Who do you think you are? You dare to speak to me in such a manner? Even your Union Lord doesn't dare to speak to me in such a manner. I'll take your head today as a punishment. I want to see what you can do if you offend your Heavenly Tao Union. Fairy Tianmiao's appearance was peerlessly beautiful. Her voice was also as pleasant as a silver bell. Her face was full of smiles. However, her words were extremely ruthless. You dare. The knight suddenly became a bit flustered. He suddenly remembered that Fairy Tianmiao was a famous witch. Many so-called elders of the Heavenly Tao Union had died at her hands. Even his Union Lord wasn't 100% sure that he could stop her. Why wouldn't I dare? Fairy Tianmiao smiled faintly, revealing two beautiful dimples at the corners of her mouth. She looked even sweeter, but her words made the hearts of everyone in the market turn even colder. What kind of joke was this? This was a peerless star of misfortune. Many people began to wonder just who Goddess Tianmiao was. She was definitely not someone to be trifled with. I think everything should be first come, first served. Suddenly, Yi Shiwen opened his mouth and said, I should be the one to kill him first. Yi Shiwen's expression was extremely indifferent. It was as if he was saying that he would trample an ant to death. There weren't many emotional fluctuations in his expression. You? The knight was startled and angry at the same time. Fairy Tianmiao was one thing, but who was this person? He had dared to say that he would kill him. He couldn't tolerate this. Otherwise, who would listen to the Heavenly Tao Union in the future? Well, you are just a small fry anyway. It doesn't matter if I kill you or not. I will let you go if you can kill him. Otherwise, I won't care if you get killed by him, Fairy Tianmiao said with a smile. Her voice was very pleasant to listen to. It sounded like the tinkling of a mountain spring. Well, this is what you said. The knight who had said that he wasn't afraid suddenly revealed a pleasantly surprised expression on his face. Facing this green-robed man was better than facing Fairy Tianmiao. Boy, you are going to die today. The knight promptly turned towards Yi Shiwen. It seems that I'm easy to bully. Yi Shiwen slightly sneered. Heavenly Tao Union? Who does it think it is? It dares to claim to represent the Heavenly Tao? A toad is yawning. What a big tone. Yi Shiwen only acted according to his heart. He would hate a person even more if he didn't like them. You are courting death. The knight suddenly became furious. The ominous beast under his crotch seemed to have sensed the anger of its master, and crazily rushed towards Yi Shiwen. Boom. 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 This ominous beast seemed to be running on the ground with the imposing aura of a magnificent army. This ominous beast was also a quasi-emperor-level ominous beast. The imposing aura of the knight on the back of this ominous beast had risen to the peak. He was a disciple of the heavenly Tao Union. So, his strength couldn't be fake. He wasn't as strong as Fairy Tianmiao, but he had firmly stepped into the quasi-emperor realm. Bang! One man and one mount rushed forward. But they had the terrifying imposing aura of a magnificent army. Their cooperation was extremely tacit. They had already fought countless times. So, their combined strength was far greater than the sum of their parts. Countless people in the bazaar felt their hearts tremble. It seemed as if they had seen a peerless ominous beast rushing towards them. They thought, the disciples of the heavenly Tao Union are really outstanding. Even such an unknown disciple has the cultivation of a quasi-emperor. It seemed like that person was going to die. Xing Shangzi was also at a loss. In his opinion, Yi Shiwen was his big client. If this big client died, then he would cry his eyes out. A super nouveau riche could casually use the thunder source. In his opinion, Yi Shiwen was indeed a nouveau riche. It wasn't easy to meet such a person anywhere and at any time. No, I can't let my distinguished guest die. Xing Shangzi immediately made a decision. He didn't need to intervene in the matter between the Heavenly Tao Union and Qin Wugo. But this person was his big client. He wouldn't be able to find another one if he lost one. Just as he was about to make a move, that man and one mount had already rushed in front of Yi Shiwen. But Yi Shiwen seemed to be stupid. He didn't move at all. Just when everyone was about to cry out in alarm, they saw that Yi Shiwen finally moved. His palm slashed out like a blade. Bang! There was a loud rumbling sound. It was the sound of the fierce beast that the knight was riding on falling to the ground. It was unknown when its head had flown up high. A human-like look of confusion and disbelief appeared on that ferocious face. The knight wasn't prepared at all. The fierce beast he was riding on died tragically. His whole body flew towards Yi Shiwen under the inertia. There was a long spear in his hand. He maintained his momentum and stabbed towards Yi Shiwen. But he only saw a white light flying in front of his eyes. Then, he felt a sharp pain coming from his chest. His whole body flew out. Poochie! He discovered that there was a huge crack on his chest. His Iron Man armor, which was refined with endless magical materials, was like tofu. It was easily cut by someone. It couldn't protect him. Bang! Then, the knight instantly fell to the ground. He struggled for a while, but there was no way for him to get up. His vitality seemed to have been completely drained in an instant. One strike killed two great quasi-emperors. Everyone was stunned. They saw that Yi Shiwen didn't make any big moves at all. It was just a casual strike, and the two great quasi-emperors were killed in an instant. This person was simply too tyrannical. Especially Xing Shangzi, he was dumbfounded. He knew that if he were to make a move, he could barely stop this knight at most. He couldn't pose a more fatal threat to this knight at all. But this person killed the knight almost effortlessly. At this time, he finally understood what this person meant when he said that he would exchange his life for the knight's. If he were to swap places with the knight at this time, perhaps he wouldn't fare much better. He would also be killed in a second. Who the hell is this person? How can he be so terrifying? Even the eldest senior brother of the Sky Commerce Alliance doesn't have such tyrannical strength. And not far from Yi Shiwen, Fairy Tianmiao almost saw with her own eyes how Yi Shiwen killed the two great quasi-emperors in a second. Her heart seemed to have stopped for a moment. Although she was confident that she could easily kill this knight and his ominous beast, the so-called easily didn't mean that he was killed in a second. Yes, this could only be described as a second. She seemed to have never heard of someone who could kill a quasi-emperor in a second. Even her cultivation, which was infinitely close to the emperor realm, couldn't do such a thing. Could it be that this person was a Emperor Realm expert? No, Emperor Realm experts couldn't enter the Celestial Pole Island at all. The restriction of the Celestial Pole Island had a huge restriction on Emperor Realm experts, so it was impossible for them to enter. Moreover, there were people guarding and inspecting the outside of the Celestial Pole Island. It was impossible for an Emperor Realm expert to sneak in. So who the hell was this person? Yi Shiwen's expression didn't change. Even if he had been seriously injured, it would be a bit difficult for him to deal with an Emperor Realm expert. However, it would only take one move to deal with a quasi-emperor. I will come again after half a year. I hope that you will have prepared the medicinal materials by then. Yi Shiwen looked at Xing Shangzi and said, Of course, but you have killed the people of the Sky Commerce Alliance. They won't let you go. Xing Shangzi suddenly felt that his mouth was dry. He hadn't recovered from the shock of a moment ago. He smiled bitterly and said, Then let them come. I want to see how many of them are easy to kill. Yi Shiwen didn't care at all. They were just a group of quasi-emperors. How could they overturn the sky? The gap between an Emperor Realm expert and a quasi-emperor expert was like the gap between heaven and earth. It was really too big. He could ignore them even if he was seriously injured. After saying this, Yi Shiwen turned around and left the market, leaving behind a dumbfounded crowd. Yi Shiwen walked in the forest and suddenly stopped. He said, Come out. I don't know why Fairy Tianmiao is following me. I just want to see who you are. How can you be so powerful? Her voice sounded like a silver bell, like a mountain spring. It was crisp and pleasant to listen to. Chapter 30-20. Yi Shiwen stopped and turned around. As expected, Fairy Tianmiao was following behind him. She was walking lightly on the ground, as if she was walking on air, and there was a bright smile on her face. Don't you know that curiosity is the root of danger? Yi Shiwen said indifferently. Fairy Tianmiao was following him, and he had discovered her from the very beginning. I only know that curiosity is the beginning of unlocking all secret. You're really special. Fairy Tianmiao said bluntly. Oh? Why do you say so? Yi Shiwen stopped and began to walk forward again. No one in the bazaar dared to stop this evil star. Just now, Yi Shiwen's ferocious demeanor of killing a quasi-emperor with a single strike had frightened everyone. Even the star merchants who organized this market were frightened. They didn't know where this peerless malefic star had come from, and he didn't even give face to the Heavenly Tao sect. He almost fainted at the thought of a colossus like the Heavenly Tao sect. I don't know either. In any case, you're quite special. You're a bit like the super elders of our 9 Nether sect who live in seclusion. However, their temperament isn't as strong as yours. Fairy Tianmiao smiled like a flower. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, who would have known that this was a malefic star who would kill people whenever she wanted? 9 Nether sect? Another super sect. No wonder they dare to challenge the Heavenly Tao Union. Yi Shiwen said after thinking for a while. Previously, Fairy Jiangzhu had briefed him on the situation of the Fortune God dynasty. She had mentioned that other than the divine capital of the Fortune God dynasty, there were also 4 heavenly venerables that shook the world. They represented the power of the Fortune God dynasty. However, there were many sects that were independent and were tyrant. Both the Heavenly Tao sect and the 9 Nether sect were among them. Among them, the Heavenly Tao sect was the leader of many sections. They were the most powerful, and their sect master was said to be able to challenge the celestial masters. Huh? So you know how powerful the Heavenly Tao sect is. Since you know how powerful the Heavenly Tao sect is, you still dare to challenge the Heavenly Tao sect. Could it be that you also have a great background? Fairy Tianmiao quickly caught up with Yi Shiwen. She had a bright smile on her face, but she was actually extremely shocked. She had almost lost track of the person in front of her. The person before him seemed to be right in front of him, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't catch up with him. This discovery almost caused her to jump in fright. She, Fairy Tianmiao, could be said to be famous in the world for a period of time, and her status was comparable to the sect masters and exalts of some small sections. In fact, she was even ranked at the top of the reserve imperial monarchs list below the imperial monarchs. Her cultivation could be said to be profound. But why couldn't he keep up with this green-robed man? His movement technique wasn't anything special, but as he walked, he suddenly felt like he couldn't keep up. It was as if there was a maze in front of him, isolating him. He was clearly in front of him, but it felt like he was separated by countless worlds. In the end, she was forced to quietly raise her power, and only then did she barely manage to keep up. She was secretly shocked. Yi Shiwen was a little surprised to see that Fairy Tianmiao was able to keep up with him. He didn't use any movement technique, but he was an emperor monarch, and all laws were under his control. For him, it didn't matter whether he used movement techniques or not. An ordinary quasi-emperor wouldn't even be able to see his figure. But Fairy Tianmiao was able to keep up with him. This strength was almost on par with Yi Wudi, Yi Mo, and the others in the past. However, there was still a huge gap between her and Yi Shiwen, who hadn't become an emperor monarch yet. Yi Shiwen was almost the strongest expert below the emperor monarch level at that time. He was also the strongest if all the extraordinary experts that had appeared in the universe were included. Therefore, he was terrifyingly tyrannical in every emperor-monarch level, and it was because he had laid a good foundation. It's best if you know as little as you can about me. You stayed in that market for a long time, so you should know that I was buying medicinal materials. You should have guessed that I wanted to heal myself. I was injured by a very powerful person, so it won't do you any good if you get involved in this matter. Yi Shiwen replied indifferently. Fairy Tianmiao's smile froze, and then she smiled like a flower. So, you know everything. I thought I was hiding well, but you're warning me. Are you worried about me? Don't flatter yourself. The more you know about some things, the faster you will die. Even if you have the backing of the 9 Nether Holy Cult, some people can easily kill you. Yi Shiwen's tone was dull. It was a matter of course for him. The 9 Nether Cult is nothing? Fairy Tianmiao's smile didn't diminish. There aren't many people who would dare to say that. I don't believe that your enemy is stronger than those old monsters of my family. Even the heavenly masters have to give face to our headmaster. Yi Shiwen stopped and glanced at Fairy Tianmiao. That person is a monster, a madman. You will die if you run into him, and not even your bones will be left. So, I advise you to stay far away from him. When Yi Shiwen talked about being eaten, he didn't mean being eaten to death in the ordinary people's understanding. Instead, he meant that he would be swallowed alive. He believed that Emperor Primordial Chaos would do anything in order to survive. He even dared to eat an emperor monarch, let alone a mere quasi-emperor. Okay, I know. Even if I have this monster, it won't work. Fairy Tianmiao's expression froze. She could feel that Yi Shiwen wasn't joking, but then she smiled again, as if there was nothing in this world that could make her smile disappear. But I still feel that you are worried about me. Am I wrong? Ha ha! Yi Shiwen chuckled and sped up his pace. The two seemed to be carefree, but in fact they were moving very fast. In just a moment they had already left the direction of the bazaar. Hey! Yi Shiwen used a bit of his martial power, and the two were instantly pulled apart. Fairy Tianmiao was pulled hundreds of miles away in an instant. She angrily stamped her small boots, and raised her martial power to the limit as if she was in a fit of pique. Her figure streaked across the sky like a fairy. It was extremely graceful, but also extremely fast. This was the supreme agility technique of the 9 Nether Cult. After a long time, she saw Yi Shiwen in the distance, and quickly chased after him. Hey, is it really okay for you to say ha-ha to a little girl like this? She had seen people gnashing their teeth at her in her life, and had also seen people admiring her, but she had never seen someone completely disregard her like this. It wasn't that they were playing hard to get, but they genuinely didn't put her in their eyes at all. No one knew, even she herself did not realize, that unknowingly, she had also developed a bit of competitive spirit. Yi Shiwen turned around, and saw that Fairy Tianmiao had stubbornly chased after him. He couldn't help but feel angry and amused at the same time, and said, "You're very persistent, but you're not a little girl. If all the little girls in the world were peak quasi-emperors, then all the men in the world wouldn't be able to survive. Why don't you slow down a bit and wait for me?" Fairy Tianmiao's charming eyes flashed as she looked at Yi Shiwen. She looked extremely delicate as she said, "Put away your charm technique. This level of charm technique is useless against me." Yi Shiwen indifferently said, "Don't blame me for being ruthless if you use it again." Yi Shiwen had the enlightening mind ancient tree on his body, and his martial power was tyrannical and outstanding. So, this charm technique was nothing to him. It couldn't affect him even a little bit. Fairy Tianmiao could feel that Yi Shiwen wasn't joking. The current Yi Shiwen was like the supreme elders of her sect who had become emperors. They couldn't be violated. They were the supreme existences of the world. They controlled the world and could educate the people. They couldn't be blasphemed against by others. I know. Fairy Tianmiao stuck out her tongue, and quickly put away her charm technique. She wasn't convinced, but she wasn't a fool. She didn't feel any killing intention from Yi Shiwen's body. However, Yi Shiwen had killed a quasi-emperor without any killing intention on his body. People would have killing intention towards other people. However, who had ever heard of people having killing intention towards ants? They were just ants that could be trampled to death at any time. How could they have killing intention towards them? "Do you really want to throw me off so heartlessly?" Fairy Tianmiao said. "There's no friendship between us." Yi Shiwen stopped and looked at Fairy Tianmiao with an indifferent expression and said, "You'll regret it if you chase after me again. Even a disciple of the Nine Nether Holy Cult can't save you." "What if I insist on chasing after you?" Fairy Tianmiao suddenly said. She was bursting with curiosity towards such a mysterious man. She had never felt this way before. She had never had the impulse to understand a person like this. "Then come with me. It just so happens that I'm short of a maidservant. You're barely qualified to be one," Yi Shiwen suddenly said. Just as he was about to say those words, he suddenly changed his mind. He knew too little about the Fortune God dynasty, but if he had someone who had a deep understanding of the Fortune God dynasty and the fortune world by his side, it would undoubtedly save him a lot of trouble. Fairy Tianmiao inexplicably heaved a sigh of relief, as if she had been freed from hell. However, she immediately became angry. She was the current saintess of the Nine Nether Holy Cult. Her status was high enough to be on an equal footing with the sect masters of some small sections. In fact, she was even nobler than them. This person actually dared to ask her to be a maidservant, and barely qualified to be one. It was simply a humiliation. "What if I say no?" Fairy Tianmiao suddenly felt a little regretful. Wasn't her curiosity too strong? "That's not up to you." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.